You're strapped in to a live radio broadcast on Pure Rock Radio.
Just about everyone and their dog has a website or uses a domain name like yourname.com. Thanks to our partnership with GoDaddy, the leader in hosting and domain name registration, we can offer all our listeners big savings on everything GoDaddy offers. Go to purerockradio.net/GoDaddy for a full list of coupon codes to save on hosting your website, registering your domain name, and much more. You can even switch to GoDaddy anytime to start saving, and our coupon codes will never expire. Every time you use one of our coupon codes, it benefits you, Pure Rock Radio, and all the shows we carry. So thanks for visiting purerockradio.net/GoDaddy today. Try coupon code POD167 to save 10% off your GoDaddy purchases today.
Welcome to the Used Bin. All music, all the time. What are you listening to? Used Bin Radio.
You don't expect to hear.
No.
That's nice.
That is definitely, yeah, I would say that, and Shout at the Devil, certainly the go-to Motley records. I think they went completely downhill after that, but that's just me.
There was a few moments on Theater of Pain, but after that it was pretty much diminishing returns.
There was a few moments on Feel Good, too, but all in all, they really, I think they sort of peaked at Shout at the Devil. In retrospect, anyway, they peaked at Shout at the Devil.
Not a lot of Generation Swine moments to speak of.
No.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with his pink hair.
That might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
But anyway, guys, hey, listen, have a great show. I was, like I said, man, you guys got me hooked, man. You guys are incredible.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate that.
Thanks so
Tony.
Right, take care. Bye now.
Stay safe, man. Well, there you go. Yeah. Wow, who knew the show would start out with a little Motley?
Yeah.
I love those records. I won't lie. I'm a fan.
Well, and I apologize for not doing this before we got our first call of the evening, but let me just get this on the table now because we're starting something new here.
Oh,
and
something
I was
tells me I'm into something
going through all of the archives here at the vast Used Bin Radio studios, and we were finding all kinds of CDs, DVDs, and promotional items that we've come across over the years here in the Used Bin, and so we're starting a Used Bin junk drawer. So if you're so inclined to call during the course of tonight or any of our shows, and if you make us crack a smile, or if you're very entertaining, we're just going to throw you a bonus gift. We're just going to give you free stuff. So just to give you a little glimpse right now here in the Used Bin, we've got in the junk drawer, we've got things like some Dream Theater DVDs, Dream Theater CDs. We've got a Yes box set. I've got a David Beckham DVD if anybody wants that.
Who?
A King Baby T-shirt.
Does anyone know David Beckham?
I've got some Insulters CDs.
Is that a picture of your dog?
Which are rare. A couple of the Casablanca and Party Every Day books from when we had Larry Harris on the show.
Good book, too. Good book.
So all kinds of good stuff. So if you're on the phone with us and you feel so inclined, ask us for something in the junk drawer and we just might hook you up.
Well, yeah, but don't everybody ask.
Yeah.
In fact, no, don't ask. We'll give it to you.
We'll give it to you if we think you're worthy. That's right.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
So
now,
there you go. What have you been listening to, Holmes?
Well, I've been listening to a lot of stuff. So you ready to dig deep into this topic?
Sure.
All right. Before I even get to that, though, I want to tell you what I've been watching.
Okay.
Because we ended the show on a bit of a cliffhanger last week.
Perfect.
Because as regular listeners will know, and new listeners won't know, but I'm going to tell you now, I have never, in the last 9 seasons, watched American Idol, whereas my cohort here, Bradley, watches it religiously. Is that fair? You watch it religiously?
Although I dropped out midway through last season. It was just awful. But okay. I do definitely... I'm pretty religious about it.
Other than 5 or 10 minutes the night when Kelly Clarkson won, which was, 10 years ago?
Sure.
I've never really watched American Idol ever. So now you've got the new blood with the Steven Tyler and the J-Lo. I figured, I got to give it a try and see what America's been clamoring about.
Good.
I've never liked the premise of the show. Basically, it's a karaoke shot to a bunch of kids and see if you could turn them into
pop stars.
A pop star.
Yeah.
And a cookie cutter pop star, if you will.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd give it a shot. I think Steven is great. I think he's really engaging and really fun. I think J-Lo is tremendous. She's very likable and she's beautiful.
Beautiful.
And that was maybe one of the things that I didn't find any appeal with Simon. I had nothing in common with him, and he just seemed to whine, and I had no interest in Simon. Anyway, long story short, I watched the first couple of nights of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I would say that I'm going to become a diehard American Idol fan now, but I like the chemistry of the current lineup, and some of the people that come on have genuine talent, and I would like to see more of them and see what happens to them in the future. Whereas some of them just seem like they're getting by because they're whining and crying, and it's their backstory and not their talent that's going to get them through to the next round. And that's unfortunate because that's not what it's about.
Well, let me just I'll give you a little bit of a heads up in that this is the ultra preliminary rounds. So a lot of the people you see get through are going to be gone when they get to the next phase of the show, which is what they call the Hollywood Week part. Okay. And once they get
to Hollywood!
Right. So once they go to Hollywood Week, they're going to narrow it down to probably, by the time Hollywood Week is over, which is really probably 2 weeks, they're going to narrow it down to maybe 10 or 20, maybe 15 or 20. And those are the ones that are the real deal. And even at that point, it's probably the top 10 that are the real deal. So there's a lot of narrowing, and they've really made a point this year to let a lot of those guys go through because it's a lot nicer this season. I mean, the good thing about Simon was Simon told people a lot of what I personally wanted to say, whereas this panel says it really nicely. See, I sort of like a little meanness. I like a little bit of being direct. So I like it when Simon would say, "You're awful. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. Can you stop it? This is not good."
The only meanness I've really seen at all so far was from Randy, who I guess traditionally was sort of like, "Yo, dog." He's the nice guy.
But he's now the tiebreaker. You see, Simon used to be the tiebreaker. I'll just give you a bit of perspective. Yeah. Just in the way that they're sitting. The way they're sitting now is Tyler, J-Lo, and then Randy.
The way they sit has a significance?
It does now because it's a new panel, so you begin to see the significance. It used to be Randy, Paula, and then Simon. And so Simon was the tiebreaker.
So he's the last word on the subject.
He's the final word. And now sort of Randy's taken over that role.
Interesting.
So he has to be a little bit more direct. And although, I'll be honest, I mean, I watched one person get through who was very average at best, where, Tyler was a no, I think, and J-Lo was a yes, or it was vice versa. And Randy got, he got sucked into the begging. See, Simon never got sucked into that. Simon was very clear on what he liked and what he didn't like. Yeah. So, and also, just one other thing about what you said, which I thought was really interesting, is that this is a show that sort of creates cookie-cutter pop stars.
Right.
There's really, if you look at some of the people that have come out of this show, they're not always so cookie-cutter. I mean, Adam Lambert's a good example of that.
He would be on the fringe of what I would say is passable in their eyes, and the only reason I say that is because there seems to be a fairly narrow margin of what is acceptable to them. Mm-hmm. And this thought came into my head. If David Lee Roth was unknown, or if Jeff Tate were unknown, or Rob Halford was unknown, and he walked onto that stage, sang something a cappella, I don't know that they'd get through.
But that's a different show.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, you have to keep it, in the context of what that show is. It's a pop show. They're looking for a pop star.
If Dave Matthews was unknown and he walked in front of them and sang something a cappella, I don't think he gets through.
He gets through.
You think so?
The tone of his voice, he's got such a great tone.
I don't think Bono would get through.
No.
It's not. It doesn't conform to what they're looking for, which is a very specific top 40 kind of pop.
But they're honest about it. They're not.
That's true.
They don't.
That's true.
They don't hide it in that they're anybody goes through if you're good at whatever. I mean, fact of the matter is, later on when they do some of these theme shows, which I guess they're going to do less of this year, but they'll do some of these theme nights.
Are they going to do an Iron Maiden night?
They are doing a Maiden night.
Good. That'll be fun. I'll watch that one.
They're also doing a Dream Theater night.
Good.
But they're still looking for a drummer, so I don't know how that's going to work out. But when they do some of these theme nights, I mean, you don't want to hear Halford sing country. In fact,
I do.
The fact of the matter is, who cares about, these people are top 40 cookie cutter pop stars. That's what they're looking for.
Dude.
Yeah.
Wow. Jellyfish rarities here on the Usman, ladies and gentlemen.
Didn't I tell you
we're going to be all over the musical map tonight, I have a feeling.
Yeah, dude, didn't I tell you that Every once in a while, I try to throw things in here and keep you on your toes.
And just to keep us on our toes here, walking in the door right now, ladies and gentlemen, and it's smelling good, is Rachel, the Metal Warrior Princess, in an Iron Maiden T-shirt.
Yeah.
With a Viking, like an Eddie version of Thor or something on the cover. That's pretty cool. Nice shirt.
Hey, man, take off your jacket, Rach.
Somewhere back in time.
No, I never saw that shirt.
That's a good one.
It's weird because Maiden only has a couple shirts that they sell at their shows.
Couple thousand.
Usually we see them all. So.
A couple per night.
I got to get you a chair, so just give me a minute. I'm sorry. But anyway, just to finish up on the Idol thing, was that I have to agree with you. I was really bummed how good Tyler was. I just wanted.
You were bummed?
Yeah. Because I just didn't want him to be on that show. I just felt like it just kills that credibility of Tyler and all that stuff. And the fact of the matter is he's so absolutely engaging. I'll give you just a quick example of what I mean. They had the guy who they brought in who was engaged, right? And his wife got in that car accident.
Right,
She's got the brain damage and all that.
Right.
And when they brought her in the wheelchair, and it just,
he was so sincere the way he kissed her and held her hand.
Dude, he just gets it. Like, and I'm gonna just, in the interest of full disclosure, I am a flat out wuss with stuff like that. Like, dude, I'm instant tearjerker guy.
Yeah.
So I go right into tears watching that. He couldn't have been any better. He was absolutely perfect with that. Better than J-Lo and better than Randy, because he just got it. Like, he gets the fact that he's a rock star, and he gets the fact of what he communicates to other people and what he means to other people. And I didn't think it would show through like it did on Idol, and it really does. And I'm in awe of the guy.
Even though it's auditions, and I could appreciate the concentration involved in singing in front of these people, I like
and the nerves
and the nerve.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that they're comfortable enough to, on occasion, sing along if they're having a good time, and make it sort of a group thing. I think it was just really much more endearing that way than anything I can imagine was going. I can't imagine Simon ever singing along with anybody.
No, but that wasn't his role.
Yeah.
See, the role was you had Randy, who was the kind of studio musician guy who gets how to produce records and make records and all that kind of stuff. You have Paula, who was sort of the former, musician and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got Simon, who's the record company guy. And
the record company guy.
And once that was lost, that's where I thought this panel would fail, because you don't have the one guy in there to say, look, from a record company standpoint, this does or doesn't work.
Right.
And that's what I thought Simon's role was. But they've nailed it. I'm impressed.
Nice.
All right, so who's in the used bin, and where are you calling us from?
Hello?
Hey, Joe Mama.
Who's this?
What's up, bitch?
It's a voice from the past.
Who is it?
It's Vinny Mugambu. What's happening, partner? What are you doing tonight?
Hey, man, I just had a conversation with Candy Arnett. She sends her best to use Ben.
Very nice, very nice. Inside joke. I'll tell you all about Candy Arnett later. What have you been listening to, Vinny?
Well, lately I've been listening to Winger, but...
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I was listening to old a la carte, actually.
Oh, nice. They're doing a reunion show. I just got an email from they still have a publicist, if you could believe it, and Brian O'Brien is putting together another reunion.
Oh, right on.
So I'll get you the details offline about that, so maybe we can hook up and relive the glory days. And be sure to invite Candy Arnett down for that one.
You got it, brother. Hey, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care, partner.
Later, brother.
Some inside info there.
Okay.
So, I wanted to give you a used bin exclusive.
Okay. Love exclusives.
This is a used bin exclusive, and let me just set it up by saying a friend of the show, who we had on the show sometime last year, was an incredible blues rock guitarist named Pat O'Brien, who is known in these parts as the king of Huntington Drive, because he plays with his band, The Priests of Love, every Friday and Saturday night at a little club on Huntington Drive in Monrovia. I'm setting it up that way because here's the story. Somebody very, very close to me, who lives in Monrovia, California, who shall go unnamed.
Okay.
Lives next door to, I don't know if he's a producer or an engineer or somebody in the music industry. And a couple of days ago, some big trucks rolled up next door to the house, and they started unloading amps and unloading drums and unloading guitars and unloading gear. And over the next couple of days, he would see Steven Tyler and Joey Kramer and all the guys hanging out on the front lawn. Apparently, they're recording some basic tracks for the next Aerosmith record at a residential house in Monrovia.
Nice.
Now here's where it gets wacky. At one point, he overheard our secret source. Overheard Steven Tyler on the phone with presumably his manager, talking about how Joe Perry has not shown up,
right,
and is nowhere to be seen.
That's an actual story.
Yeah, that part is.
Yeah.
But the exclusive is that our source went over and told the guys that they need to check out Pat O'Brien, the King of Huntington Drive, if they're looking for a new guitarist.
How'd that go over?
Apparently, it went over really well because they've been seen at a lot of the local clubs and hangouts in Monrovia. They've probably at this point seen Pat O'Brien play.
That's great.
They've been hanging out at all the Mexican restaurants on Huntington Drive.
That's great.
And so Aerosmith are in the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, that works out good for Tyler because he's working out here.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great. I would like to try to get Randy Jackson on the show. I do have a little bit of a relationship
from Zebra.
Yes, exactly.
Randy Jackson from Zebra.
Yeah, and Journey. Wait, not the same Randy.
Not the
Jackson.
same Randy Jackson.
No, Randy Jackson from Journey on the show.
Yo, dog.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good guest though, man. That guy's pretty great musically.
Sure,
yeah,
he could talk about Idol and Raised on Radio.
Yeah, would. Totally.
One other thing that I was watching before we even dive into what we've been listening to is, did you watch Saturday Night Live?
I did. I watched some of it.
Okay, well, Nicki Minaj.
Yeah.
Not my style of music,
right.
Not my go-to in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Normally the kind of artist that I would watch, I would roll my eyes and go, are you kidding? Is this what it's come to?
Right.
I don't know her. I don't know those songs. I would have to say she knocked one out of the park.
Yeah, she's
I
good.
thought she was tremendous.
Yeah, she's good.
Not my style of music at all, but as far as the presentation, I thought she was great. She sang live, which is very important to me. Her musicians were top-notch.
Yeah.
I was really impressed.
Yeah, she's good.
Not to put her on the same level, but I mean, I think back to like the first time I saw Eminem and thought, okay, this is not my style of music. I'm going to hate this. And then I just realized, wow, the guy's got a gift.
Yeah.
She's the real deal as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree. She's really good.
And she's got nice
Talented.
pink hair, and that's always good.
She's talented, and she was in a skit. Did you see the Blackula skit?
I didn't.
Genius.
I saw
brilliant.
I saw some of the opening skits with the Facebook, and I didn't even crack a smile. It's funny how Saturday Night Live in the early
Jesse
days.
Eisenberg, though, is funny.
Yeah,
he I think is funny. He was in every single skit on the show. That doesn't happen very often.
in the early days, I would have belly laughs. Then in the 80s, it was like, you know, good solid punchlines.
Yeah.
And then it became like a few giggles. Now I don't even crack a smile anymore.
Yeah.
Some of it was even painful.
They did a skit, this Blackula skit, which was, you know how they used to do, what was it called? Masterpiece Theater. They used to make fun of Masterpiece Theater.
Right.
Right? And they used to have Dan Aykroyd as the, welcome to
Masterpiece
or
Theater.
bad, what was it called? Bad something theater, anyway. And they would do, like, Belushi would be dressed up in, like, Swan Lake or whatever.
Right.
Well, they were doing something similar to that, and they were doing about revisiting their favorite black exploitation films. So they were doing Blackula, which was really funny. And Nicki Minaj, she was the bride of Blackula.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was really, and the whole thing was about the size of her ass. It was very, very
okay.
funny. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was cute. But I agree with you. Saturday Night Live has gotten very hit and miss, and it's a little bit too much miss instead of hit these days.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What, brother man, have you been listening to?
Well, I, like you, I'm going to take a step back from that.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what I watched.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you this. Damn you, Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Damn you. Damn you to hell.
Are you sucked in?
Oh, my God.
Are you putting up drywall in your mind?
Every time I try
building
to turn
stairs?
it off, it pulls me back in.
You wallpapering?
Oh, dude,
You
that
redoing
show,
your kitchen in your head?
Dude, I don't ever watch this show.
How are your cabinets?
I don't ever watch. Did you ever watch it?
I have. Actually, we had some guests in town last week who, after long days at Disneyland and Universal and doing all the the touristy things, we would come back. We would crash on the couch and put our feet up, and we would watch Extreme Home Makeover all last week.
Did you watch last week?
Yeah.
Was it Sunday night?
I forget which night, but why? What'd you say?
Dude, I never watch that show. I don't watch it for a lot of reasons.
Dude, we are all over the map tonight.
I know. Dude, we're hitting prog metal so hard in the next hour that we can deviate from the norm.
We need a home makeover right now.
Dude, I'm not kidding you. I don't watch that show for a very specific reason, because I get so sucked in.
And because you have a penis.
No, yeah, well, not when I watch that show, I don't. And I've already prefaced this with telling you that I'm just the biggest wuss when it comes to stuff like this. Damn that show. I couldn't turn it off. I was so sucked in.
You're ready to look at color swatches, aren't you?
No. It's got nothing to do with that. Like, for me, that part has nothing to do with it. The makeover part, it's the story. I'm so sucked in. Oh, this family and the daughter that she got hit by a car. She was texting while driving, and the family is now starting this whole movement about no texting and driving, and they have no money. And they have no money, so their home is just in shambles, and they're going to come in and fix the home and all this stuff. And they got a little 13-year-old girl. She's a big Justin Bieber fan. So that when they send the family on the vacation while they rebuild the house, she got to meet Justin Bieber. And
nice,
dude. I'm like, God damn that show. I was so sucked in. I couldn't stop. And I'm in tears as the show is ending. It was so much. It was so emotional for me, dude. I was just bitter. I got to the point where I was like, I'm never watching this kind of show ever again. Because I'm so sucked. It's a 2-hour fucking Hallmark commercial. You know what I mean? But for me, it is anyway. I'm such a wuss. I mean, I'm better off watching like Beaches or something like that, or On Golden Pond.
Nice. All right.
So that's what I watch.
How about we leave everybody in suspense for a couple minutes about what we've been listening to? I want to take a little break.
Okay.
I want to play you a song, which is off one of the discs that I have been listening to.
Will I grow my balls back listening to it?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I need that.
This is new from Mr. Big.
Oh, good.
So
love that band.
This is Undertow. I love this stuff. This is great. Here's a little Mr. Big for you.
Hi, this is Neil Peart of Rush. If you're in a hurry to hear some Rush, don't touch your dial. Presto. You can hear it right here.
Come on. It's been so long.
Nice. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Tuesday night. We're here in the Used Bin, and as mentioned earlier, in the house with us this evening, as she should be, is Rachel, the Metal Warrior Princess. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, guys.
What's going on, Rach? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. It's nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you. You feeling better?
Feeling better.
Somebody was very sick after she left our studio last week.
Yes.
And I don't know if we should take responsibility for that or not.
Yeah, as soon as I got home, I felt it coming on, and I left planet Earth and went to Sickville.
That's Joe's fault, by the way. Will Joe take responsibility?
Yeah,
for that?
probably my fault.
Yeah, probably wasn't my fault.
Yeah. Hey, you just got an email?
I did. I got a great email from our friend William.
Okay.
Who says, just finished the Matt Scannell show and must say having an FOP in studio was great, and he was getting a lot of love. Today I've been listening to some Motions of Desire from Magic Pie.
Nice. My. Pie.
Says, I also spend my birthday listening to Rush and working on Pro Tools recordings of Mitch McDonald. He was a Canadian Idol 2 years ago. And Evans and Doherty. I even got to mess around with some drums. I must say that I've had a pretty good day today. Well, happy birthday, dude. If today's your birthday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know.
That's good times.
Yeah. He said, I've had a pretty good day today, and 2 Used-Bin shows didn't hurt. The video that Hermie made was hilarious, and I hope that everyone takes advantage of the Used-Bin junk drawer. I'll be passing tonight because even though the items are great, I believe there is more coming. I will also...
He knows us too well.
Yes. So there you go.
Very
well
nice.
done, William.
Very
well
nice. Well, if you are just joining us this evening, in just a little while, we're going to have our featured guest of the evening, Jeff Wagner, who is the author of a fabulous, fabulous book called Mean Deviation: 4 Decades of Prog Metal, which is, pretty much up our alley. I think we're going to have a good time.
We heard about this book and went, okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Where do we sign?
That's right.
But until then, brother man,
sir,
what have you been listening to?
Well, dude, I've been on a prog kick, and I don't know, I can't even tell you why that happened. I don't know if it was last week's big prog show, or I don't know what it was.
Pie.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, dude, but I needed to listen to IQ in the worst way. And
very proud of you.
I want to know how many listeners out there have thought to themselves, I need to listen to some IQ in the worst way. Well, that was me this week. So I just randomly went through some IQ. I put on Subterranea.
Great record.
So into it.
Great record.
And, it's like I was saying last week. You know how I can always tell a good record is if I just put it on the computer, and I'm doing something in the meantime, and I always find myself drifting back into going, God, that's good.
Right.
Or, what's that?
Right.
Oh, yeah, I need to listen to that again. That was that whole record.
Yeah.
I don't think I got anything done.
There's a lot of highlights on that record.
It's really good. Really, really enjoyed it. And then, of course, I went right to Dark Matter.
Dark Matter's great.
Which I think some people, although I think you would probably differ, but some people would say that's the preeminent of the IQ records. I don't know if I would say that for me, but in all fairness, I haven't dug deep enough into IQ probably to say that yet. But I know a lot of people say that.
I don't think most IQ diehards would say that. That's very recent.
I'll tell you
that's
why.
a very recent record.
You know why I say that? I actually read, and this was totally random, by the way, but on Mike Portnoy's forum, there was an IQ thread.
Yeah.
And a guy, he wrote, just listen to the Frequency record, loved it. What else should I listen to? Every single comment after that, and believe me, there were pages of it, have to start with Dark Matter and then work your way back.
Really?
That's
okay.
the record.
It is a great record. It's for the old school IQ people. It's probably not. It's not the go-to because it's so recent.
Right.
It would be like people saying Vapor Trails is the go-to on Rush. It's a great record, but it's fairly recent.
But that's okay, right?
Yeah,
that doesn't mean it can't be the record.
But their old classics from the 80s or their earlier days would definitely be albums like The Wake or The Lush Attic. I was mentioning to you earlier, if I was trying to get somebody into the band for the first time, I would probably just point them at the Forever Live album.
Right.
Because it really kind of covers the wide spectrum of what they do. And it's very derivative of Peter Gabriel era Genesis, but it's a little bit more proggy and a little bit more not ethereal, but sort of alien. You know, he's even more
textured and layered.
He's even more like dark, sinister, and like from another planet than Gabriel was.
See, it's
Peter
funny.
Peter Nichols. I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I when it comes to like pointing someone to a live album, I understand certain bands you do that with.
Frampton, Maiden, UFO.
Yeah, that's all good. For me, Warrant. I guess for me though, I have such a hard time going there because I listen to a live album for the first time if it's the first time I've heard that band, and I find myself consciously or unconsciously looking for the albums that certain songs are on,
right,
and zeroing in just on the studio versions of those live tunes and not being able to sort of grasp
that's
the whole
fair.
album.
That's a fair point.
You know, so. But yeah, I loved it. I'm gonna dig.
I'm so glad.
I'm just digging deep into my IQ, and I don't know what the hell that happened.
Digging deep into your IQ.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Listen, I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree. I'll be the first to tell you that. But if I can do anything to bolster my IQ,
there you go.
Sign a brother up.
Very, very nice.
You know what else I listened to?
What's that?
And I emailed you about it the minute I listened to it. Was Fozzy.
Yeah.
Now I know that there's probably a ton of Fozzy fans out there. I think there are plenty, and probably a lot of our listeners are Fozzy fans who
they play him a lot here on Pure Rock Radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the listeners that are more geared towards the metal side of our show. But I always thought Fozzy was just kind of silly. You know, Chris Jericho, he's a wrestler. I'm a sort of a closet wrestling fan. And so I know who Jericho is, and I know what the shtick is and all that. I just never really took him seriously as a singer. I just thought it was kind of a joke. Dude, I put on that new record, Chasing the Grail. Fuck yeah.
Yeah?
Dude. Have you heard it? Oh, come, Rach. Oh, sorry, Joe. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. I'm like pointing and doing things. That record is great.
Really?
Dude, I'll be the first to tell you, dude. I don't know if this is a dude that can really sing or can't really sing. You know, if this is just a lot of studio stuff. It sounds to me like there's a lot of stuff going on in the studio. But, dude, he can sing. The songs are really good. It's like a good metal record.
All around.
All around.
Really?
Cover to cover. It's heavy. It's really melodic in the choruses. It's decently written stuff. I mean, you know, it's not metal for brainiacs by any stretch, right. But, you know, that's, you know, you don't always need to have thinking man's metal. It is epic stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. So I listened to the first record, which I had no idea was an all covers record. Dude, it's really good.
So what does he cover?
It covers like a Crocus. I mean,
Screaming in the Night, or something more, something deeper.
Something a little deeper. Good. It covers Dio. I can't remember the songs off the top of my head. I'm just trying to think. It covers a Scorpions tune, I think. It's all the kind of like, it's all that metal that we grew up, you know, a lot of us grew up listening to, the later stages of the 70s and 80s metal. It's really good, man. I was very impressed, and I give high.
See the microphones up in the air? You see them?
I see them. Yeah, it was just really epic stuff. Talk about being caught by surprise. And I tell you, I probably enjoy being caught by surprise by a record like that than going in with high expectations, because usually I'm fairly disappointed.
Yeah.
This is good shit. So I can't wait to put that on a thumb drive
I will
for you.
check that out.
Get your thoughts on it.
I will check it out.
I'm going to have to check it out now.
Yeah.
Definitely need to check it out.
Dude, Chris Jericho.
I'm in.
Who would have thought?
I'm in.
Who would have thought? He's handsome, Canadian, an author. I mean, a wrestler, a champion wrestler, by the way. I'm a fan.
He's got it all going on.
Yeah,
and now a rock star.
I'm a fan. He's no Roddy Piper.
Oh, take it easy now.
He's no Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. But he's Chris Jericho. He's a bad boy.
I'm having a lapse here. Who was what was his name? Cindy Lauper's manager guy.
Lou Albano. Yeah, Captain Lou Albano.
Captain Lou.
Dead guy.
Dead guy.
Yeah, well, dude, if you fucking singed rubber bands to your face, your clock starts ticking pretty quick after that.
Wow. Well, Lou just wants to have fun.
I love wrestling, by the way.
Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash. There you go. Who has Superfly Jimmy Snuka?
Uh-oh.
And his cousin, the Tonga Kid. How about that?
You're scaring me.
Dude, I'm telling you, the greatest name, what was it? One of the best wrestling names I ever heard of, Just Incredible. Like, that's the greatest name. I would want to name my son Just Incredible.
Sure.
Put an end to that pretty quick.
I always thought if like you were an insurance salesman, it would be cool if your name was Just in Case.
Right. It's true, yeah.
I'm just saying. Just in case you haven't heard some ELP in a while,
dude,
check this out. It's going to come out on February 22nd, but I have an advance copy from the label. There's a new ELP live album. Now, normally I would not be like going, oh, dude, there's a new ELP live album. I love me some ELP, but this is pretty epic. It was recorded in 1978 on their last tour before, the many reunion tours of the 90s. In fact, it could have been one of the very last shows in the original incarnation. It was from 78 at the Nassau Coliseum in New York, and this was that tour where for the first part of the tour, they basically went bankrupt because they brought a 105-piece orchestra on the road with them, which means 105 meals a day, 105 hotel rooms a day. I don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into. And so that only lasted a few weeks of the tour. But then they finished up the tour with just the three of them. And so this was one of the nights where it was just the three of them. And I got to say, they were in fine progressive rock form this night. Right? Yeah, really good. They, within the span of a 2-hour show, you got your full 30 minutes of Tarkus. You got like 25 minutes of pictures at an exhibition.
What year is this?
78.
78, okay.
And they do a version of Pirates that could be my new go-to if I want to hear some ELP. I'm just going to put on this version of Pirates.
Okay.
It's really good. Greg Lake probably never sounded better vocally, and some of that early, like late 60s, early 70s, sort of annoying analogness to their recordings is all gone. It sounds very, very rich and very full and good stuff, good prog.
Right.
Even Tarkus has sort of like a majesty about it instead of just sounding like a clunky progressive work in progress.
Well, I'd like to hear it.
So it's pretty great.
Yeah, my thing with ELP is, I'm just not the biggest ELP fan.
Yeah. I get it.
Have we talked about that
We
before?
have, and it's definitely an acquired taste.
I remember seeing them with you and thinking to myself, like 15 minutes into the show, like, I get it. Like, you guys can really play. Do something else for a minute.
With them, the excess was the show. With a lot of bands, it's like they'll show off a little bit of excess and then move on to something else. Excess was the name of the game with them.
Yeah, it's
and
too
so
much for me.
if they could play 5 songs in a 3-hour show and stretch them out for 45 minutes, that's what they were all about.
But I have no problem with that. It was just they try to put so many notes into those 5 songs that it's like after a while you have to stretch it out and come down just for a minute.
Well, after 30 minutes of Tarkus, they'll throw you a nice acoustic Lucky Man then dive back into Pictures at an Exhibition.
No, but I want in the middle of a 30-minute song or a 40 minutes, I don't even care if the song is 2 fucking hours. I'm fine with all of that. But bring it down and pull it back up again, like tempo. Those guys are just at 10 all the time.
Dude,
do you know what I'm saying?
How do we get a 2-hour Rush song? I'm ready for that.
How do we get a 2-hour Rush song?
I'm ready for that.
It's not in this era.
No, that'll be when they finally record Sir Gawain.
Yeah.
Sir Gawain in The Green Knight.
Rush ain't doing it, but Rash might.
There you go.
You might get a 2-hour song.
There you go.
Rash.
All right, let me tell you some of the other things I've been listening to, because I've been listening to a lot of wacky stuff. I've been all over the field. It was interesting that a little while ago you made a reference to Swan Lake. I can't explain to you why, but I've been on a huge Tchaikovsky kick lately. Ever since I saw Black Swan, the Natalie Portman movie. She's brilliant in it, but it's all the music from Swan Lake. That is some epic stuff. Why hasn't Emerson, Lake and Palmer made like an epic prog version of Swan Lake? I want to know. Anyway,
I have nothing to say.
Moving right along. On somebody's suggestion last week, I forget who called in, but mentioned the Bruce Springsteen, The Promise.
Darren.
Well, Darren, I was at my favorite place, Amoeba Records, over the weekend, and picked up the 2 CD version of The Promise, which is all the stuff that was fully realized, not just like incomplete demos, but fully realized songs from around the period of Darkness on the Edge of Town. I didn't realize that he had actually recorded full versions of Because the Night and Fire and some of those songs that we know, famously that he wrote but were covered by other people.
Right.
But I didn't realize he actually did studio versions of them. So it's nice to hear his versions of those.
Right.
And lots of other great songs that would have been fine on that record. So quality stuff there.
Did you listen to all of it and watch it all, or just?
I didn't pick up the DVD box set. I just picked up they sell the 2 CD Promise as a separate package. So I just went with that for now.
Did you listen to it in its entirety, kind of thing?
I did.
Oh, good.
I did. And some of them really stood out immediately, and others I'll need to give more of a listen to, but all good quality stuff if you like some Bruce from 78. So
groovy.
Good stuff there.
I'm in.
Listen to the new Mr. Big, which I mentioned, and played a track from earlier. That's really nice.
I would like a copy of that.
I will hook you up with that.
That sounded really good.
I'm going through this fast because I'm rattling off a lot of stuff because I listened to a lot of wacky stuff.
Yeah.
Another one was...
Wait,
go ahead.
Quick Mr. Big question. Do we know, are they touring here?
They'll be here in April.
Really?
House of Blues on Sunset Strip.
Is that right?
Yes, and I think we will be there.
I hope we will be there, and I think that we need Paul Gilbert on this rock and roll radio program.
We will work that out.
Wow.
We will work that out.
They're coming here, huh?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought they were only touring Europe. I like Mr. Big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them more now than I did when they were current. Because at the time, I remember I saw them a bunch of times because they opened for Rush on several tours. Back when Rush used to have opening acts.
The bad old days.
The bad old days. Although we saw a few good bands during the course of those years.
Mr. Big being one of them. Primus
being one of them.
Tommy Shaw.
Gary Moore. UFO, if you go way back with me.
But Lordy never opened for him.
No, Lordy. So we'll check out the Mr. Big. That'll be good.
I'm excited. That's good news.
Somebody else in recent weeks was telling me that I should give more attention to Jeff Buckley because he had a similar career path as Kevin Gilbert, who I love and champion all the time to our listeners. So I spent some time with, not the Grace record, which I have and like and think it's fine, but never quite got the obsession that a lot of people did.
Right.
But I picked up a record that he's got in the used bin at Amoeba called Live at the Olympia in Paris.
Okay.
And I know he's got a couple of live records where it's just him acoustic. This is him with a full band, and they are magnificent.
Really?
And they rock much harder than they do on the Grace record. Really, really strong. His version of Dream Brother, which has always been one of my favorites, is a standout. But he throws in a couple of covers and some long extended versions. Very solid live band. Even throws in a few jokes now and then. So fun night. And I got a better flavor of what Jeff Buckley was about from the live album.
I didn't know he joked.
It wasn't like Saturday Night Live gut-busting laughs.
Oh, okay.
But,
I thought he was very...
I cracked a smile.
I always thought he was very serious.
I thought so, too. No, he was very likable. So I had a misconception about Jeff Buckley.
Okay.
And then...
Yes.
And this was just really fun for me, because this is in preparation for tonight. I wanted to get my prog metal on, so obviously I was listening to some Rush and some Dream Theater and all the usual suspects. But...
You're listening to Rush, huh?
Yeah, I do every once in a while, like 9 times a day. So I realized that there's an awful lot of stuff in my vast Ty Shan, Brother Man. That's what I'm talking about. There's an awful lot of stuff in my collection which admittedly I've never listened to before, because maybe it was of interest to me at the time, or somebody burned me copies of this and it sits on a shelf.
Right.
I've got quite a bit of Fate's Warning, and I've never really given them much of a time. I sort of wrote them off a long time ago. It was very, very derivative of Iron Maiden and a little proggy, but not really. And so I've never really been much of a Fate's Warning guy. That all changed this week.
Good.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I am sold. I've been listening to the wrong stuff.
What'd you listen to?
Well, in the past, whenever I would listen to Fate's Warning, I would listen to some of the early stuff with John Arch singing, which really, even now, sounds very derivative of Iron Maiden to me. Like very, very early Majesty / Dream Theater stuff, and it wasn't very appealing to me. Albums like No Exit, or even Parallels, which I'm sure some of the purists and diehards out there are going, oh God, I love that record. It wasn't for me.
In fact, I think Lee Graham, actually, if I remember, he put a post on the Facebook page talking about No Exit.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Did he?
His go-to.
But, my go-to, without a doubt right now, is a record called A Pleasant Shade of Gray, which is very, for me, sort of reminiscent of Scenes from a Memory. It's a concept album. It's, all continuous. It's got really dark parts, really ethereal parts, over the top, metallic prog parts. It's really stunning. Really stunning. So I'm going to have to turn you on to that.
I have it.
Do you?
I do. But I actually listened to Little Fates Warning myself this week.
And where'd you go?
I went, in reading, some of Jeff Wagner's book, I put on Perfect Symmetry. And that record, let me tell you, I'm very much like you, Joe. I've never really dug into my Fates Warning. I've had a lot of Fates Warning. I've just never really dug into it. Dude, Perfect Symmetry is really good. It's really good. Really bitchin' stuff. For whatever reason, it doesn't have it's not tons of hooks and it's not tons of that kind of stuff. It's just really good metal. But I'll say this, because I know it's one of the older albums, is that if you put some of that stuff in context of when it was released, because it's easy to look back on it now, listening to it for the first time, looking back and saying it's derivative of Maiden or Dream Theater or blah, blah, blah. Put it in context of when that record came out.
Well, in fairness, not derivative of Dream Theater, because even Portnoy has admitted in interviews that they came a little later.
Right.
And so, if anything, Dream Theater, he would say would be
vice versa.
Would be derivative of some Fates Warning. But yeah, the early stuff just didn't appeal to me. But
try that record. Do you have that record?
I think I do.
I would highly recommend that record one more time. Give it a solid listen.
Okay.
I think you'll be intrigued.
I have a feeling that and I'm out on a limb here, but I have a feeling from what I've read that Jeff Wagner's go-to is probably going to be where is it? Awake in the Garden.
I listened to that too this week,
which I guess is one of their best received. I know that they re-released it with a double disc with demo versions and live tracks and stuff like that. So it's probably one of the
we should ask them about that.
The better loved releases in their career. But yeah, for my money, A Pleasant Shade of Grey I thought was stunning. I was really into it. But
that'll be my
then I stumbled onto something else that I just had a burned copy of with a handwritten little note on, and the CD had been sitting on my wall for probably the last 8 years. I've never ever listened to it, and I popped it on, and it was an EP that was released by the original singer for Fates Warning. The guy's name was John Arch. Okay. Do you know anything about his story?
No.
In a nutshell, he sang on the first 3 records when they were up and coming, and he had a day job. He built custom furniture, which leads right into your home makeover story. It's all coming full circle here.
Every time I get out, they pull me back in.
It's all full circle. Around the time of the 3rd album, or just after the 3rd album, I guess they really wanted to give this the full-blown attempt to make it as a band. And they told him, look, we want you to quit your day job and we're going to do this for real now. And he said, no, I got bills to pay. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but basically he didn't want to quit his day job. So they said, fine, you're out of the band. And that was the last time he made music. That would have been, I'm guessing, in the mid to late 80s.
Okay.
And they replaced him. They carried on without him. And then sometime around 2002, I want to say, he recorded a 2-song EP.
Got it.
Mike Portnoy played drums on it. Joey Vera played on it. And I had never heard it before, although it's been sitting on my CD wall for years.
2 long songs.
2 long songs. One of them blew my mind.
Yeah.
In fact, in just a couple of minutes here, when we're getting ready to go to our featured guest, I'm going to play you one of those songs. I'm not going to play the whole thing.
No, that'd be bad.
But I'm going to give you a sample. Without further ado, and we're at 7:58. We should probably just get right to it.
By the way, Kyle was telling us, but they're recording again with Joey Vera and John Arch.
Yeah, it's not going to be Fates Warning, but it's the Arch Mateos project, and
they're recording that record right by the Canyon Club in Agora.
Oh, they're not recording in Monrovia with Aerosmith?
No, they are.
Oh, that's good.
But they've moved to Agora because Aerosmith moved in. But that's pretty epic. So if anyone's interested in crashing that party with me, I'm in.
Okay. Well, we're going to bring on our featured guest in just a few moments, Jeff Wagner, the author of Mean Deviation, 4 decades of prog metal. We're very excited. And I hope you get excited about a little John Arch. This is called Relentless from the Twist of Fate EP, and I thought this was epic.
Hello, I'm Phil Collins, and this has to be the silliest show that I've ever heard.
And welcome back into the Used Bin. It's Brad and Joe and Rachel, the Metal Warrior Princess, in the studio with you. And we are pleased to welcome Jeff Wagner. He's the author of Mean Deviation, 4 decades of progressive heavy metal, into the bin with us. Hey, Jeff, how are you, man?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Thanks for joining us. I know it's you're on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's a little after 11, way past my bedtime.
Are you buried in snow over there?
No.
Oh,
no,
good.
I'm in southern Virginia. It's the fairly mild climate. So.
Oh, good.
But I just talked to one of my brothers, and he's in Iowa, and he's in the Death Storm 2011 right now.
Wow, it's brutal out there, man. The whole Midwest, and I know Chicago got nailed, and Cleveland got nailed, and it's awful.
Yep. Well, good luck to them.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it was 70 degrees in California today. But I didn't want to rub that in.
Oh, yeah. Well, we are very excited to have you with us here tonight, Jeff. We're both big fans of the genre. Love the book. We've just been flipping through it over here and reading some of the great detail that you've got going on the history of prog metal. But before we get to any of that, one of the things we always like to ask our guests here in the Used Bin is, what have you been listening to lately? What's in your MP3 player these days?
Well, I'm an old school sort of open air stereo guy, so can I comment on that?
Certainly.
Of course.
No, I think the last few albums I listened to were Droop, Handful of Stars, Ukrainian, I don't even know how to describe them, Ukrainian band, Mars Volta,
nice,
Bedlam and Goliath.
Great record.
Merciful Fate, Melissa, and a bunch of Voivod, but that's always the case.
Okay.
That's in regular rotation?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. Big Voivod fan, huh?
And you guys actually, your mention of Bacchus Plateau on your website made me pull out Caress of Steel, which
good.
I've always championed that album, and I think that's one of the most it is the most underrated Rush album, because the band doesn't even like it, and a lot of their fans are kind of about it, and I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Think it's a golden Rush moment,
and
for sure.
And it's the one that's got, hands down, the least amount of play on tours in the last 30 years.
Easily.
If you get a little bit of Bastille Day and a medley, you're lucky. Otherwise, you're not getting anything off that record.
Yeah, they ought to dump everything from the first album and just play Caress of Steel.
That's what I'm saying.
Or most of it, anyway.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's funny with Rush. Not that we ever talk about Rush on this show.
Not on this show.
Yeah, we stay far away from those guys. But if we were to talk about Rush for just for a half a second, there is countless songs like that, or countless. It seems like records like that just seem to get screwed. But Caress of Steel definitely being the main one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of you thinks Hold Your Fire is probably, right?
That's Brad. He's the Tai Shan guy.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. You know what? I was telling Joe earlier that recently I've been falling more and more back in love with that 80s period of Rush. And for a long time, the first show I ever went to was Grace Under Pressure, so I got introduced to them in that period of Rush. But at that show, the song that stood out for me was the Overture in Temples of Syrinx, and I just immediately ran to 2112.
That's a cute little song.
Yeah, and that's
not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Good little ditty.
Yeah. And so I can't. So I've been really hell bent on that early stages of Rush, and then just recently I've just fallen back in love with the Hold Your Fires, and for me especially Presto. I just think we got screwed in the Presto era. But I love that record, and for whatever reason, Tai Shan, the first time I heard it, fell in love with it. And I want it live.
I think that 80s Rush stuff takes some time for some people. Like, I've been following Rush since I was like 12 or something, and I was way into them, and I was in everything they'd done, and then they put out Power Windows, and then they did Hold Your Fire, and I was like, hold on, this is not what I'm into.
Right.
And, I was getting into more and more like heavier and more extreme metal at that time. And, it was only like in I'm trying to think, around 99, 2000, that I went back to Presto, went back to Hold Your Fire, and it was like...
that's when they became a power trio again.
Yeah, in a way, sure. Yeah, and it's streamlining. Sometimes it takes a few years or a few decades to sort of get into a band who's streamlined, who you previously loved because they were just going every which way.
Yeah,
you know?
well, yeah, and you can look at, looking back on something when you can take a look at the full body of work. It seems to be a little easier to have a more appreciation for that. I know.
Absolutely. I love doing that. I love, when I get into a band, and if I get into a band that's from the 70s or the 80s, and I'm kind of just discovering them now, I love to get the entire library. I think that's just the best. It tells the entire story.
I completely agree. And the thing with that 80s period and even that 90s period of Rush is that we get bombarded with it live, and we miss so much of the early stuff live that it's easy to go, all right, I'm tired of this era of Rush. Give me back the other, the old Rush. But
right.
When you have a little perspective on it, and being that they used to not tour for 3-4 years at a time, it was easier to get back into that period. So
yeah sure.
It's funny. You just mentioned an interesting phenomenon. It's something that both Brad and I do, and that's when we start discovering a band, how we'll go out, and we're both a little obsessive compulsive, I guess, when it comes to this kind of thing. Right. We'll go out and pretty much get the entire catalog and get an overview. And I was just admitting, just before we brought you on the line, that although I've owned a bunch of Fate's Warning, and mind you, I'm a huge progressive metal fan. I love me some Dream Theater, everything from King Crimson Rush and Symphony X and everything in between. But Fate's Warning was one of those bands I just never really got into until about 3 days ago.
Wow.
And it's funny because the early John Arch records for me were so derivative of sort of Iron Maiden and sounded very 80s and dated to me that I'd never really explored further into their catalog. And it wasn't until by accident a couple of days ago that I put on Pleasant Shade of Grey that I thought, I'm in. Now I get it. So if you were pointing somebody like me who's just kind of discovering the band, where do I go next?
Perfect Symmetry. Because I think that kind of marries like everything that came before it with that, their roots are still in traditional metal on that album, but they've taken it and completely it's quite slick in its production, but it's also really, really tricky. That was the first album they brought in drummer Mark Zonder. Okay. And, he really changed the band, I think, in a lot of ways. So I think Perfect Symmetry, that's their fifth album.
I listened to that this week, actually. That is it's a special record. It really is.
Yes, it is.
I was shocked, and what got me to read it actually was thumbing through your book, and I went, all right, so to see what this is all about. And I know you point to that in the book, and it's wow, what a great record, really, really good record.
Well, I'm good. That's it's one of the things that's happening with the book that I'm most glad about it, which is that it's making people either rediscover things or look into things that they were just maybe curious about or just heard the name of, and that's what it's all about. It's getting people to listen and to just enjoy an album and take it for what it is.
Right.
And what you said about Fate's Warning is really not unusual. They've always been kind of like the odd band out for people.
Right.
It's it's easy to find people into Dream Theater and Queensryche, but
right.
If you take what I call the big three in the book, and I didn't lump them in as the big three. I'm not the person that did that, but they are considered the big three of that strain of prog metal. But Fate's Warning is always the odd band out of that trio. And I don't know why that is. They've always been my favorite. I mean,
oh, really?
By far.
Okay.
Sure. I think they're, from the I love the Arch era stuff. I think what you were saying about it being derivative of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, I think that really only applies to the first album. And you might try to go back and listen to Spectre Within and especially Awaken the Guardian.
Okay.
Getting into the later stuff, you might have a new pair of ears going back into that. So.
Okay, fair enough. Now, obviously, we want to dive in and talk about the book, but one more thing, as long as we're on the subject, you mentioned the big three. And it's funny how just before the show, Brad and I were talking about how we're all excited. We're going to be going to the Big Four show when Metallica comes through town with Megadeth and Anthrax and Slayer. If there were a Big Four of prog metal, who would be the fourth one in your opinion?
Oh boy.
On the
that's
spot.
Tough. You know why that's tough, and this gets us into the book, is because I don't consider progressive metal necessarily a genre as much as it is taking what the word progressive is defined as and applying that to metal, or taking a diverse and wild set of influences and ideas and great imagination and applying that to metal, and then seeing what comes out the other end. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why when you say who'd be the fourth one, I'd jump at somebody like a Voivod, even though I know a lot of people don't get them or don't even know about them. To me, they were one of the most innovative, exploratory, interesting, intelligent metal bands of all time. So it's easy for me to put them in there at number 4, although they don't really sound anything like those other bands.
Right. Well, that's sort of the definition of progressive, right? It doesn't all have to sound exactly the same.
I think it shouldn't. I don't. I don't think it should. And yeah.
So then, what would you, if you had to put then, starting over with that question, if you had to put a big 4 together, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in that, you don't have to make Queensryche, Fate's Warning, in that group. Who do you put as a big 4 tour that you want to see?
Well, even though they're marginally metal, I would think Rush had to be there because I do consider the early material metal. I mean, Caress of Steel is that's early metal.
Right.
That's early heavy metal. Right. So I would do Rush, Voivod, and Voivod actually have played with Rush before in Canada on the Presto tour. Fate's Warning.
Love that.
And probably Opeth, because I think Opeth are one of the most interesting and consistently killer progressive metal bands out there right now.
Nice. When do I buy tickets for this show?
That's
I'm right behind you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Interesting. Sure. Dream Theater not on that bill, huh?
I like Dream Theater. I think that their best albums are behind them. Yeah. What happens with this whole Portnoy thing remains to be seen. But I think they're. I don't think that they can continue to be as influential. I think in the wake of the album Awake, that was the period where they were just totally making thousands of people run to their instruments and practice like hell, and you got a lot of bands that sounded derivative of Fate's Warning, which wasn't necessarily always bad. You got some good bands out of that, but you didn't get a whole lot of like progressive bands. And I just personally, as a fan, I think that their better albums are behind them, and I say that as a huge fan of Octavarium. I think that was like a really bright light in some of their later albums.
Sure. Agreed.
Just on the Portnoy situation, do you know who this drummer is for Dream Theater? I mean, obviously everyone's, the rumors are abound, but they've kept this thing pretty secret.
Speculating. I think the best call I would make, just from reading what everybody else is saying and just my own gut feeling, is John Macaluso.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to see that. You know. So what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, for a long time, everyone kept saying Marco Miniman, and then he made it really clear that he's not the guy. I mean, he's got 40,000 projects going on, and none of them are Dream Theater. So,
and he's never stuck with a band for more than like 6 months.
Right. Well, I got
6 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I got a funny feeling that this drummer is not going to have to do that either. I mean, maybe a tour and a record and done. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see the big Portnoy return happening at some point.
Sure. Right. Do you think it's weird that this whole thing went down the way it went down? I mean, it was such a big story in the progressive rock world. You know what I mean? It even got such mainstream play with him leaving the band. I mean,
what is a big deal? Because that's like Gene Simmons leaving Kiss. Mike Portnoy was such a huge player in terms of like not just being instrumental in writing their music, but in directing their live shows, in reaching out to the fans, being the guy that did the interviews. I mean,
he was sort of the spiritual leader of the band in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, he was the big fan. He was the guy that probably
he was
them to
he was the Lars. He was the Lars of Dream Theater.
What's that?
He was the Lars of Dream Theater.
He was the Lars Ulrich and the Gene Simmons. He was so instrumental. So it's no wonder that it was such a big deal.
Yeah. Well, in the book, you call him the ambassador of prog.
Well, he actually, when I interviewed him for the book, I interviewed him a couple times, and the first time I interviewed him, he dubbed himself the goodwill ambassador of progressive metal. Because he
dubbed himself that? Nice.
What's that?
He dubbed himself that?
He did. He did.
Fair enough.
And I think I quoted him as such in the book as saying that. Yeah. But he said that because we were talking about the Progressive Nation tour that Dream Theater puts together every year. Yeah. And I think what they're doing is really great. They're not bringing out all these bands that sound like Dream Theater. They could easily do that and get an audience, and it would go down really well. But they've taken out 3, and they've taken out Between the Buried and Me, and they've taken out Opeth. I mean, these are great bands.
Big Elf. That was a stretch.
Elf,
that was a stretch for them.
What a cool little left field choice that was. So.
Are you a fan of those guys?
I think they're interesting, and it's not that they're so regressive that I can't get into it. I mean, I love Witchcraft. I don't know if you've heard of them, but that's a Swedish band. They couldn't be more regressive. So it's not that they're regressive that bothers me. I just, they don't don't really kill me, but
that's fair.
They're cool.
Fair
They're cool, and I thought it was awesome that Dream Theater took them on tour.
Yeah, with Zappa Plays Zappa, which was just ridiculously great.
Right? Yeah, that's another cool choice. So I think that's why he called himself the Goodwill Ambassador. He's bringing together these different audiences. Who some of the Dream Theater audience might grumble that some of these bands were picked, but I think it's a great idea.
No, I couldn't agree with you more.
Good. Well, let's go way back in time now. So before there was prog metal or whatever that genre is, were you more of a progressive rock guy or more of a metal guy or equal parts, or what were you listening to back then?
No, I think when I was a kid, I was brought up on Kiss, and I'm still a fan, and I got into progressively heavier stuff. Judas Priest, I heard on the radio, and I was hooked. And then I got into Iron Maiden, and then I was hooked. And then I got into, Metallica, and that was it. And then, so I was more of a metal fan. I was listening to Rush early on too, but I came to progressive rock through metal. Being very well versed in metal, being a crazy follower of it for years, and then I first discovered. I guess my first progressive rock band would have been King Crimson. I discovered them in the early 90s.
Okay.
Obviously they had been around before that. I just I wasn't quite aware of stuff like that.
So things like Thrak were sort of your introduction.
Discipline was
Discipline.
Actually.
Okay, nice.
Discipline was because I just met somebody in 91, I think it was, that had the Discipline album, and they played me the song In Discipline,
sure,
which is just this array of crazy time signatures and weird dynamics, and Adrian Belew's kind of humorous spoken part, and I was just like, this is from Mars. This is amazing.
Right.
And but I also I think even at that time, and as the further I went into prog rock, I started to see all these parallels between what progressive rock was doing in the 70s and the early 80s, and the metal I was listening to. There just seemed to be so many parallels. So,
right. Well, in the book, in the beginning of the book, you sort of cite King Crimson as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as sort of the forefathers of progressive metal. Is that right?
Yes, and I took that cue from Robert Fripp himself, the guitarist of King Crimson, because he described the song Red from the album Red as metal in 5 time, in 5/4 time.
So he was sort of the first Goodwill Ambassador of prog, if you will.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally, man. I mean, because...
But don't take his picture.
And I don't know when he said this. I think I have to look up the don't take his picture.
Just making sure you're paying attention, Jeff.
I think he said that maybe later in the 70s when metal as a term was happening, but the fact is, in 73 or 74, whenever Red came out, I mean, that was abrasive, it was dark, it was difficult, and I think that really, there's a reason King Crimson is the favorite prog band of so many metalheads.
Yeah, I totally get that, and that's certainly, where I think Tool comes from, and bands like that who sort of sit on the border between prog and metal, sort of right there on the cusp of things.
Yeah.
If there were a moment, and we were trying to think about this before the show, if there was a single moment, and it doesn't necessarily have to be King Crimson, but if there was a recorded moment that was sort of the origins of the prog metal DNA, can you sort of pinpoint the moment in time?
It's so hard not to go back to Rush.
Yeah,
I'm
with you.
Like a broken record, and everybody listening is probably rolling their eyes, Rush again. But
no, nobody's rolling their eyes that it's listening to this show.
If they're familiar with your show, then they won't. Right. But I can't help but do that, and that's why if you look at the index of this book, Rush is 6 pages, or
yeah.
There's a lot of Rush in here, and I think there's a reason they're a common denominator for so many of these metal bands. So I would go back and I would look at Bytor and the Snow Dog.
Sure. Yeah.
I would also look. I glance at this in the book, and I don't really make too much of it because I know it's probably a controversial thing to say. But Black Sabbath's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album, was very much as much of a progressive rock album as it was an early metal album.
Sure.
So, I look at that one, and I hope people will put that one under the microscope a little more.
Yeah.
And I know that actually a couple people told me that they have since reading the book, so that's good.
Well, when I read that in the book, I was totally intrigued by the examples you were giving and the points you were making and pointing directly to Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I think you're dead on with that, and I had never quite thought of it in that perspective.
Cool.
But I think you're dead on with that. And then with some of the the following Sabbath records, how they took a bit of a progressive tone and technical ecstasy,
Symptom of the Universe.
Like sure.
Yeah,
really good.
That's a good call. If you know the Never Say Die album, the song Air Dance.
We played that on the show recently, and Joe looked at me and went, "Who the fuck is this?" And I said, "Dude, it's Sabbath."
I almost never listen to that record anymore.
It's jazz rock. That song is jazz rock. I mean, the rest of the album isn't necessarily jazz rock, but Air Dance is just this weird jazz rock thing that might as well have come from some proggy band from Holland. I mean, like it.
Yeah, no, those are all good calls. For my money, I think if I had to pinpoint a moment, I would say, I think the first time that they committed Anthem to record on Fly By Night, that was when they put the heavy metal peanut butter on the rock and roll, or in the prog rock chocolate.
Awesome.
Yeah, that seems to be dead on. Another one of those bands that you point to too is Priest, and we've talked a little bit about him, but you point directly to the Rock-a-Rolla record, right?
Well, yeah, I think if you look at early Priest, early Scorpions, I mean, it's like these bands that eventually became, bona fide metal bands. It's like they couldn't help but have a little bit of prog, in their sound, because that was the big thing at the time, 73, 74. Prog was selling like out arenas, ELP and Genesis and all that. And it was like, these bands just couldn't help but kind of have that element or ingredient in their sound. So, Scorpions came out of the krautrock scene, the whole German experimental thing. They were on Brain Records, which was nothing but a prog label. And Rock-a-Rolla to me is a pretty adventurous, eclectic album.
It's interesting because I revisited Rock-a-Rolla.
And KK had some great hats back then.
Right.
and KK had some great hats, awesome sleeves.
Right.
The sleeve hung like sleeve of Wizard, I guess.
Right. Yeah,
Borat fans will know what
I went and revisited that record again too, a little bit.
Rock-a-Rolla.
Yeah, because in reading the book, I couldn't wrap my head around it, and quite frankly, I'm still having a tough time with it. So it would beg the question, and I know that this is obviously the question you get asked the most, and it gets talked about the most in regards to this book, I'm assuming, is the definition of what progressive metal is, and more specifically for me, progressive music. I can't seem to put Judas Priest's Rock-a-Rolla in that phrase of progressive music.
Well, right, but I mean, okay, I'll get your questions. The first part of that question, is, I would answer that by saying, I'm only looking at Priest and Scorpions and really even Rush as sort of like a preface to what goes on, what the real meat of the book is. And I think that's when we start talking about the big three. That's when we get into Voivod. That's when we start looking at Believer and, Cynic and Opeth and Meshuggah and all these other bands. I think that's the meat of the book. So I'm really just kind of leading up. I'm telling a story. I'm not trying to drop a bunch of band names, you know what I mean? So I think that's where that's how that should be looked at when you read it. And what does progressive music mean? There's a reason I put that. There's a Frank Zappa quote in the beginning of the book.
It's my favorite quote.
Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible.
Right.
And I feel like that allowed me to define progressive as it applies to metal in my own way. Using that quote, and that's exactly why that quote is there. And that's really, maybe people want me to say a lot more about it, but I think part of that answer's in the book, and part of it is, just a personal definition that's going to be different for every individual. For me, progressive is doing something new, taking risks, listening eclectically, and applying your influences to your own music.
Right.
Any band that comes out sounding like another band just can't be progressive by my definition. That's why I'm a little bit hard on the Dream Theater sounding bands, that whole style, because it is a style.
Sure, gotcha.
I like Dream Theater a lot. I just don't like, I can't think of a single band that I like that sounds very much like Dream Theater.
Okay.
So
that's fair. I think
that's my
fair.
definition, and that's why I get into some really weird stuff in this book, like Panthymonium from Sweden. They may be obscure as hell, but people need to know that they were doing some bizarre and really remarkable things with the form, with the genre.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from, I guess.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Jeff Wagner, who is the author of Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Prog Metal. Now, Mean Deviation is a great title because everybody's got to deviate from the norm. And
that's part of why I like that title so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that song.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the Frank Zappa quote that you just mentioned, of course, it embodies the same spirit. But I want to play devil's advocate for just a minute on that definition that you gave, because if everybody needs to deviate from the norm being sort of mainstream pop music, is it a contradiction of terms then for progressive metal or progressive music at all to become mainstream? In other words, with bands like Tool suddenly having the kind of success that Vandergrift Generator never could have dreamed of, does that mean they can't be prog?
As long as they don't stay in one place, as long as every album gives you something of a surprise, makes you feel like they're really moving forward in some significant way, then I don't think it's a problem. I just think people... Right now, I think people's ears are more open to something different. I mean, a band like Mastodon never would have had this kind of success about 10, 12 years ago. People weren't ready for music that heavy to also be that sort of epic and adventurous.
Right.
So I think it's just all a matter of, like, Vandergrift Generator probably opened the doors a little bit wider for Queensryche. And Queensryche might have opened the door a little bit wider for a band like... I don't know, Cynic. And Cynic might have opened the door a little bit wider for a band like Mastodon. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's very similar in that the 90s we had this phenomenon called alternative, where when arena rock and hair metal was the soup du jour, if you will, they were coming out with this new stuff from left field, but eventually alternative became the darlings of MTV and Rolling Stone, and they became the mainstream. What were the alternative to at that point?
That's a problem of the label itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why I think, in the book I kind of suggest that maybe we need a new definition for some of these bands that are called progressive, who everybody knows in their right mind they aren't really that progressive by definition. So it's a matter of just, this kind of tag being placed on them that everybody identifies with, and then, it's kind of like Pearl Jam. Like, I'm actually a big fan of Pearl Jam, and I know a lot of people are surprised about that, but they're one of my favorite bands. And they were considered alternative or grunge or whatever the hell those terms were supposed to mean back in the early 90s. But they transcended that. They never probably identified with those terms. They were just a rock band doing what they do. You know what I mean?
I agree completely.
And then there was the conundrum of, like, alternative being mainstream. So once it became the mainstream, there were alternatives to those bands.
Right.
Like, there was a reaction to those bands being big, and
I completely.
It's kind of silly, and I think it's a matter of semantics, and it gets kind of stupid at some point.
Well, isn't that just that's just the flat out problem with labeling bands and labeling genres? I mean, you're never gonna, you can't ever get it right when you do that.
Right.
In particular, and I'll just say, just because we were just listening to it, but Jane's Addiction, that Nothing Shocking record, was as progressive at the time as anything out there.
Totally.
And I would say as progressive within the 10 years after that as anything that came after it.
Yeah, because it was innovative, it was pioneering.
Absolutely.
It was sort of a melting pot.
It was dangerous.
It definitely was dangerous.
Yeah.
It freaked some people out. It did everything that a good, truly progressive band, or we should even get away from the word progressive. Just a truly, innovating and sort of exciting band. Bringing something new to the table. That's what they were doing, and that's great. I mean,
that's right. About. And when we go to these bands that need to progress, like what you were saying about Tool, which was that as long as these albums, have some surprise, the new albums have some surprises and a little bit different. I guess my only problem with that is sometimes those records just suck. Do you know what I mean?
But at least they're trying.
Yeah, but it bums me out I get bummed out about the band. It's just like a fan, a Rush fan who's a fan of 2112 or Caress of Steel. If they put on Grace Under Pressure or Hold Your Fire, they're just flat out bummed.
Yeah,
and I understand that. I get that.
I think it's a matter of, like, your maturity as a listener. I don't mean that in any kind of haughty way. I mean, like, I wasn't ready for those Rush albums personally when they came out, like Hold Your Fire and Presto and that kind of stuff. And it took me some time and some appreciation for slickness and streamlining and even pop to appreciate them. So it's like, I hope that people are mature enough to maybe go back to some of these records and evaluate them as they change as people and as listeners.
Right. Sort of just, I guess, putting the last nail in the coffin about labels and the misnomer of words like progressive and that kind of thing. It was just really funny to me in the last couple of days, even just listening to some of the bands that we've been talking about here, and popping the CDs into my computer and ripping the music to the computer. How the little fields.
Does that make your skin crawl when you say that, Joe?
What, ripping music to my
putting
computer?
Things in your computer, and it's not CDs or vinyl.
Yeah, but
Joe is very much the analog kid.
I am the analog kid. Brad's the digital man.
I like to hear about the spinning the black circle and
putting
the needle in the groove.
I'm a big fan of the needle in the groove.
That's another conversation for another time.
But
maybe another book.
Sure, but in putting these CDs in the computer and ripping them to the hard drive, one of the things that always cracks me up is, especially with some of these sort of genre specific bands, if you will, what pops up in the field for genre, and a lot of times it just says rock, and a lot of times it says metal, and I popped one in, it said world. I think I want to say that was like
Opeth? Okay.
It might have been like Opeth. They tend to do that, like if the band's from another country or something like that, it'll just say world music.
Yeah.
One of them even said country, and I was scratching my head going, I don't get this at all.
Apple gets confused.
Yeah, they do.
They just don't know.
Yeah. Somebody needs to be fired at Apple. I think.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
That's right. They need a music director over there is what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long has the book been in the works? When did you first have the idea to put together the definitive history of prog metal, and how long did this all take?
I think it was something that Ian Christie, if you're familiar with him, he wrote Sound of the Beat.
Sure, yeah.
He's the head of Bazillion Points. It was something that he'd been kind of pushing me toward ever since I left Metal Maniacs, and I had definitely been pursuing and some ideas book-wise immediately after leaving Maniacs in 2001. And I think there were certain instances where we were just talking metal or playing that metal board game or whatever, where he said, you got to write this book. And another thing was the earliest seed of this thing was he allowed me to read some of Sound of the Beast as a sort of like a proofreader. He sent that out to some people before it was published to get some opinions and some feedback.
Right.
And I said something about, this is really good, but I remember telling him there was no mention of Halloween in there. That seemed kind of glaring to me. And then I also said, there needs to be a little bit more about progressive metal, And he said, that's the book you're going to write someday. And I was like, okay. And then almost 10 years later, let's say 8 or 9 years later, he started Bazillion Points. And when he announced the formation of the company, I shot him an email back and said, hey, congratulations, that's amazing. I know an author who is willing to write a progressive metal book if you're willing to publish it, And he got back to me with an email very quickly and said, I've got an ISBN number with your name on it, let's go. And then, we did some of the formal stuff, like, he made me do an outline for him or a nonfiction book proposal and this kind of stuff. So that was the genesis, and that was in early 2008. And I think the final bit of proofreading and looking at the layout and saying, let's put it to the printer, that was September of 2010. So about 2.5 years.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, like we said, it is a monster of a book. It's beautifully put together. Some of the photos are great, but the detail, the attention to detail is just tremendous. And so
I'm into details. Yeah, I'm a details guy.
And I think most people that are into this form of music really are. We like the minutia. We like the backstories. Sure. We like to interpret lyrics, and we like to know, if we can count to 13 in certain time signatures. we like that.
And concept albums.
Concept albums.
I put concept albums in the index. I was like, I gotta shuffle that aside and just put it in its own little box, because there have been many great concept albums and many failures.
Right. What's your go-to concept record? Just out of curiosity.
And what's probably Genesis Lamb Lies Down in Broadway.
Nice.
There you go.
That's one of mine.
I don't understand what's going on, but I kind of like that about it. It's not this good versus evil thing.
Yeah.
It's something a little bit more, and I get something new out of it every time, and I find it to be one of the rare listenable double records, out there.
Oh,
it's a long album, and I think it's totally listenable and just exciting.
That's a great answer to that question.
Sure.
I have to say, I've never heard anyone quite describe that record like that. That was really good.
Right on.
What were some of the quote unquote misses as far as truly bad concept albums that you've come across in your research?
Good one.
Oh boy.
And does Mindcrime 2 fall into that category?
Mindcrime 2 falls in that category almost just by default because it's a sequel.
Right.
You know? Sequels should never be made. And it's not as bad of an album as I thought it was going to be, and I think a lot of people had that reaction. There is some worth to that one. But, yeah, I would consider that somewhat of a failure. It's a failure to really move ahead and be creative. They just kind of were like, well, everybody liked Mindcrime, let's do that again. You know?
Yeah, and the timing was terrible because they were in such a downward spin.
Yeah,
that band. I mean, just as far as creatively it goes. And
I'll make that my answer. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good one.
All right. Well, just before they put that out, actually, and we referenced this earlier in the show, maybe a year or two before they went in to do Mindcrime 2, was right around the time when they did, we could call it the Big 3 tour. I'm guessing, as these are three of your personal favorite bands, that you caught that show at least once.
I didn't.
Really?
Part of that was because of where I live. I live in a very rural area, and we have to travel about 2.5 to 3 hours for any show. And I think that thing was probably 6.5 hours away from me. Wow. I think the closest they played was Atlanta. Because what year was that? Was that 2000? What was it?
Maybe 04?
Yeah.
04, yeah. 04? I was definitely here. I remember them playing in Atlanta. And I was also not as enthused because I felt like this, even Mark Zonder said, the drummer for Fate's Warning, or ex-drummer, now, he said that, that was probably a tour that was 10 years too late. And I kind of agree, those are three of my favorite bands. I definitely like Dream Theater. I can't say I'm a huge, crazy devotee, but I like them a lot. Queensryche, I love them up to Promised Land, including Promised Land.
Sure.
I love that. Fate's Warning, I don't even have to say. I've talked about them way too much already, but I just felt like my enthusiasm was a bit low for that because all of those bands weren't really at a peak for me at that point. You know?
No, that's you're pretty right on, and that could almost have been a review of the evening because I actually had fairly high hopes for that show. Although you're right, I think it was several years too late, and unfortunately at the time I thought Queensryche, and they headlined the night that I saw them. I guess they were alternating with Dream Theater on the headlining slot.
Yeah.
They were absolutely awful. I think Jeff Tate had just very recently at that point shaved his head, and so here was this bald Jeff Tate who didn't resemble the guy that I remembered, and he stood behind and played a keyboard for 90% of the set, and it was absolutely uneventful. By contrast, Dream Theater did an impeccable set. They played all the right stuff for a Queensryche crowd, the sort of conceptual stuff, the tricky stuff, but without getting too virtuoso, techie on you. They weren't giving you the Satriani set. They were giving you the Queensryche set.
That's what I like about Dream Theater is they can play any song at will on a dime, and that's to me what makes a really exciting live band. I think at that point they were probably the best live band of those three. I mean, Dream Theater generally rips live anyway, but I think the fact that you can get almost any song at any moment from them is really exciting for a fan.
Absolutely. In fact, that night in particular, I remember they segued, I think it was from Learning to Live, a nice tricky version of it, into a cover of Diary of a Madman.
Oh, great. Wow.
So that's always good fun.
But you're right. They can play anything on a dime, including the Necromancer to a T.
We've heard that.
Yeah. They could probably play it better than Rush, I mean.
That's pretty clear. I mean, I've watched that several times on
check
YouTube.
It out on YouTube if you haven't seen it yet.
Epic.
I will. That's a utterly fantastic song.
Yeah. And they nail it.
Yeah, that's cool. But I mean,
And last word on that Big 3 tour, and maybe you know the answer to this, but I remember the night I saw them, Fate's Warning had on drums that night Nick DiVirgilio from Spock's Beard, and I never really got an answer as to what was he doing there, or what does he have to do with Fate's Warning.
Sure, I was actually talking about that whole thing with a friend who thought that Nick was on the whole tour, and I gathered from when I talked to Mark Zonder himself that he was on the tour as well. He was talking about it as if he was there, so if he was not, then I just misheard him. So I think there was like a part of the tour where Nick was playing and a part of the tour where Mark was playing, but that's got to be documented somewhere out there on the interwebs.
Yeah,
so,
right. Okay.
You know.
Speaking of Fate's Warning, actually, because we haven't enough tonight.
Please, let's go. Yeah.
What do you know about this new project with John Arch and all that? I saw you sent a book to him recently, right?
Yeah, I had the thrill and honor of sending John Arch a book. I had sent one to Jim Mathios, as soon as the book came out. He was one of the most helpful musicians in putting this thing together in terms of like granting me interviews and answering my emails quickly and getting me pictures and stuff like this.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the Arch Mathios thing. I just really have a problem with him not calling it Fate's Warning, and I emailed Jim immediately when that was announced and said, look, Arch, Aresti, Mathios, Vera, and Jarzambek, how is this not Fate's Warning? And he got back to me with an answer that was more explained that it was more of a business thing, that I think he wanted to call it Fate's Warning, and there was a business issue with it.
Okay.
I don't know that he wants me to give the details out or not. That they should do that, but
okay.
But I understood it a little more. But the fact is, I can't wait because I heard you guys playing the John Arch Twist of Fate EP thing.
Great
before,
stuff.
We talked, and that thing is amazing, and I just can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, agreed. And you're right. I think they really should call it Fate's Warning. But if they can't, for whatever reason, and wanted to be really clever, I think they should call it Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe.
Or Heaven and Hell. Either one. All right, so we got a few emails actually when we let some people know that you were coming on the show. So I have
my
a couple.
Mom and
yes,
my girlfriend.
That's about all the listeners. Just kidding. Okay, so this is from Kyle up in Minnesota, and he said, "How much content is on modern progressive extreme metal?" And he's referring to the wealth of bands who have started in the last 10 to 15 years. Many of them influenced by Opeth and Dream Theater, but most of them are regarded as being technical death metal, metalcore, psychedelic folk, black metal, or in some cases, really avant-garde and almost theatrical.
There's actually quite a bit of that stuff in the book, and that starts probably in the middle where we start talking about bands like Cynic and Atheist and Nocturnus. And then, we get into like the whole Norwegian scene, like either post-black metal or the avant-garde black metal stuff that's coming out, or the avant-garde metal stuff that's coming out of Norway, which I find to be a really exciting and fertile sort of movement. Headed by Arcturus, who are playing Prog Power this year, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of it. There's actually quite a bit of it. Sometimes I think it's probably, maybe too much for some people who aren't familiar with that stuff, but that's one of the reasons it's in there, because I think some of these bands on the more extreme side of metal, the more difficult side, are really pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
No question about it, and I think they've left some of the Dream Theater clones in the dust in terms of like what truly is progressive, and that's why, I focused on them quite a bit.
Well, I know when you were at Metal Maniacs, I mean, you focused a lot on some of these underground bands, and I know that could be a point of contention with your mainstream progressive metal fans.
Maybe, but the way I looked at Metal Maniacs is the same way I look at this book. For me, it wasn't how big or small the band was. I think if they did something remarkable and they had an interesting story to tell, I would put them in Metal Maniacs, and more currently I would put them in the book. There are some bands out there that are doing interesting things, but they didn't have an interesting story to tell. I mean, I've got to tell a cogent story that has flow, that is interesting to people. So it was, it didn't, for me, to put Pandemonium in there for 3 pages is probably the biggest bizarro move to most people, but I think they matter, and I think they're incredibly interesting, and that's why they're there, and I hope people, dig deep and look for their stuff. Yeah.
Well, just as a follow-up to Kyle's question, he asked, how much content is there with the instrumental acts, like Liquid Tension Experiment, and then he goes on to talk about some post-metal groups like Russian Circles, Pelican, Long Distance Calling.
Yes, I mean, stuff like Pelican and Long Distance Calling is cool. I guess I never considered it metal enough in some way. A lot of the bands that I look at, whether they're the extreme ones or the more melodic ones, they're all bands that started with a more traditional bass or a more simplistic bass, and then grew in leaps and bounds. And I think some of these bands that he's talking about with Pelican, Long Distance Calling, they start out sounding one way. They kind of have this stylistic thing. It's really cool. It's it's really finessed and atmospheric and all this, but I guess I don't hear progression from like record to record to record, and I don't hear them as metal enough. Maybe I do talk about Canvas Solaris a good bit, and some other instrumental bands. So there's a little bit of that in there. Not a ton.
Where do you stand, just out of curiosity, on these extreme vocals? Because Joe and I have this conversation a lot, and even Rachel, who's in the studio with us. I have such a hard time listening to these screaming vocals, even like with Enslaved. I have just such a hard time wrapping my head around those kind of vocals. I love the music. I get so into the music. There's just such a vibe and a feel, and it's heavy. And then
they open their mouth.
Yeah, and then I just go, oh, man.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess, I come from not only listening to bands like Crimson Glory in the mid-'80s or whatever, but also being really into Bathory. And I think there's just a certain kind of expression that these extreme vocalists have that to me puts me in a whole nother world. It's kind of otherworldly in a way that just I like my music to be generally, a lot of the times anyway. And what they do for me is they create sort of a percussive element that you don't have to worry about what they're singing about. It doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about the melody. It's not supposed to be there. It's something else. It's almost inhuman, and I like that about it. It's kind of like this. I don't know. To me, it's just taking on a character that is really kind of difficult and really demanding, and it's a love or hate thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can't describe it any more than that. But not all extreme vocalists are the same. I mean, I think somebody like Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth is an incredible vocalist with the extreme voice, whereas there are a lot of others that are just generic, and they're not. You can tell they're just not feeling it. You know what I mean? There is a feel there. So
it's funny because I know, even Portnoy has gotten. He sort of got the extreme metal vocal itch for a minute in Systematic Chaos on that record, and I wanted to tell him to stop because it's just not him.
For me, that wasn't very convincing, and that's what I mean. And I'm not just picking on him. I'm just picking on, there are others that have tried that, and it's just not convincing. So. You feel it or you don't, and some people feel it all the way, some people not at all. And I wouldn't try to convince anybody of that stuff, but I like it, and I can totally tell the difference between this guy, that guy, and the other guy. I mean, there's a lot of different expression within that approach, I guess.
I got it. I go to another quick email here. This is from Lee, and he said, what's your take on Watchtower's place in the prog pantheon? He said, I've watched their rise in Texas clubs and championed their groundbreaking music. I always thought they got short shift and were overshadowed by very bands that influenced them, like Dream Theater, Fates Warning, etc.
Yes, they were. They were one of these bands that were pioneers but were left behind by the bands that took what they did and either made it more palatable or just were there at the right time. Watchtower's first album is great, but it just sounds lousy. It doesn't have a good production. Some people might even say that about the second album. They've only got 2 albums at this point. But what do I think about Watchtower? I think they're hugely important, and there's actually, this book has almost an entire chapter on Watchtower. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
I think it's chapter 5, 6. I should know by now.
We'll talk to the author and let you know.
Please, can you get back to me on that one?
Sure. Yeah. No problem. Hey, by the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Jeff Wagner. He is the author, by the way. I was making a joke earlier. Jeff really is the author of Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal. And it's an epic book, man. I have to tell you what I enjoy most about this book, and I haven't gotten completely into it yet, but I love the way it reads. It reads really well. It's almost, I dare say, documentary style. It's really good, and it makes it an easy read, and it flows nicely.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. I mean, what I tried to do there, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because then I feel like I succeeded, because what I tried to do was tell a story, rather than I get tons of these emails, like almost every day from somebody, like, did you put this band in there? Did
Right.
you put this band in?
Right.
It's like, that wasn't the idea. It wasn't the idea to run this, like, A through Z encyclopedia, because that would be boring, and that's not a book I want to read.
Right.
It was more like, it's not like who's in there, but why are they in there?
Right,
And
right.
I wanted to tell a story, and I remember watching that baseball documentary by Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And
Great documentary.
I was inspired by it because I was in the middle of writing the book, and it kind of inspired me to, like, shift it more toward just telling a story and just telling don't focus on what these people do backstage. I'm still not interested in that so much, but tell the story as a fan. And I have to give Ian Christie a lot of credit for, like, helping me organize this incredibly vast amount of information and putting it into under one cover and making it readable. So
Right. And
he deserves a lot of credit for that.
And like Brad mentioned, the fact that it reads so well, like a story, is part of the appeal. Because had you done just sort of an encyclopedia, an alphabetical listing of all the bands, it would have been a novel little reference that we'd put on the shelf. But instead, because it reads like a story, you get sucked into the story of the development of this genre and how music develops. And along the way, just reading what I've read so far, I'm already seeing names of bands that I'm intrigued about that I want to go and discover more about. Yeah. Which begs the question, I would love to think that you had this vast knowledge all in your head already, but I'm sure you discovered some bands along the way during your research. And who were they?
I had about 98% of this in my head, if you can believe that.
Wow. Nice.
Good
nice.
for you.
But that's just the weird life I live. I did discover a few things. I discovered Extol from Norway. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They were around in the mid-'90s, early 2000s. They put out their final album is called The Blueprint Dives on Century Media, and that thing is fantastic and completely underrated. I discovered that through this. That passed me by when it came out.
What's that like?
Oh man, it's like indie rock meets extreme death thrash. They come from a Christian lyrical viewpoint, which is always interesting.
Christian death.
Christian death thrash with an huge indie rock influence on that album. Anyway,
so Death Cab for Cutie meets Enslaved.
Yeah, there's some melodic vocals. There's some really. I mean, I would hesitate to call it emo, but there's an element of that in there.
Right.
But they're great. I discovered Toxic Think This album, their second album. That I didn't get until I wrote this book, and I think I also gained an appreciation for Pain of Salvation that I never had.
Yeah, I became a fan fairly recently too. I think with them, their career, in my opinion anyway, their career has been sort of spotty in that certain records are a little too maybe experimental or electronic or whatever it is, and then others are more melodic and much more interesting. And so it really depends on where you start. I started with an album called B, and I had no time for Pain of Salvation.
Me neither.
It wasn't until I went back to some of the other records where I really got it.
The B is really difficult, but I think that's what makes Pain of Salvation Pain of Salvation. That's what intrigues me about them is they started kind of in that sort of Dream Theater-ish area, and then they moved quickly beyond that. And I don't think they're ever going to look back either. You know what I mean? I don't think you're ever going to get like 1 Hour by the Concrete Lake Part 2, The Return.
Right.
Yeah. So they're really interesting. So I think those three bands are probably the ones I discovered.
Right.
Very nice.
Do you think progressive rock is becoming a little more mainstream? I mean, there seems to be some bands out there, and we've touched on a few of them. You talked about the Mars Volta, and there's Tool, and those kinds of bands. But is it becoming this sort of, I guess, quote unquote, progressive rock? Is it becoming a little more mainstream, or is it still way down on the depth chart?
Mainstream. I think it's becoming less. There's less of a stigma against it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. It's cool for a band like the Decemberists to come out and name drop or just say prog rock.
Right.
Just say the words prog rock, and some of these hipper type people that might listen to them or read the magazines that they're featured in, they're not scared away. It's kind of like become a little bit more accepted as a legitimate sort of approach.
Yeah. Well, Joe and I have actually talked on the show a lot about the path that Coheed and Cambria took because they're definitely a prog band, but they certainly started out in the emo world.
Yeah.
And they took those emo fans and turned them into prog fans.
Right. Yeah. Sure. That's a good thing. I think a band like that can really, there's a chunk of their audience who's probably discovered some really great things because of them. They've probably gone back to some Queen albums and checked those out, and what's wrong with that? And I think that's great.
Oh,
as long as those people are buying them and not downloading them for free. So
right, there you go. And that's why I was so excited when we saw the Coheed and Cambria and the Porcupine Tree tour. I just thought all the Coheed fans are going to finally get a taste of the massive Porcupine Tree.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that it quite worked out so good, but I was excited. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it works the opposite way with Porcupine Tree and that band 3, they're one of my favorite bands right now. I think 3 are phenomenal.
Right.
And when 3 opened up for Porcupine Tree, it was kind of like they were bringing some of those Porcupine fans into this sort of newer, younger style of music,
right.
Whatever you can call what they do. So it sort of had an reverse effect, I think, too.
That's fair. Well, speaking of Porcupine Tree, I know Steven Wilson did the intro for the book. So how did that come about? And was he your first choice to do that? And are you a big Porcupine Tree fan? Let me ask you that.
No, he wasn't. But it turned out that we were turned down by my first choice, which I'll tell you about in a second. But it turned out that there's nobody else I would have wanted to write that intro than Steven, because when I got his intro, he hadn't read the book. He asked me some questions. We talked about what the book was all about. Mm-hmm. And then he said, yeah, I'm in. And then he did it, and I got the intro back. I was like, it's like he read this book.
Wow.
Like, it was really amazing. The first person we approached was Robert Fripp. I wanted to get somebody that was outside of the metal world. It would have been too easy to get Portnoy. It would have been too easy to get Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth. It would have been too obvious,
Right, sure.
So I thought if I could get somebody on the outside, but yet somebody who understands it, I think that'd be great. So, we approached Robert Fripp, and I got the most polite, email from him that said, well, it was actually through Ian Christie, that said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, but I look forward to reading Jeff's book. And I printed that out. I'm like, I'm going to keep that forever, because I got turned down by one of my biggest heroes. He seems like a pretty sincere person, and if he's truly looking forward to reading my book, then fantastic. And then we approached Steven, and he was just so gracious and awesome, and he
knows his stuff.
As busy as that guy is, he turned that stuff in quick.
Yeah, and he is busy. The guy, between Blackfield and Porcupine Tree and all these other projects, he's remastering King Crimson albums and still finding time to tour. And the guy is just a monster right now.
Write an intro for this little book.
And write an intro for this book.
I heard recently that he is now taking a break, though. His first since he started, I think.
Well, we got him here. We got him here this summer on a Blackfield tour, so we know that album's coming.
Wow,
the album's probably done, but the tour I think starts in like April or May.
Okay. Yeah. I guess his break was
short break.
Like 13 days or something.
It's the Portnoy version of a vacation.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love seeing Portnoy's like posts on Facebook or his Twitter things where he says, much needed vacation, home with the family, and 2 days later, on my way to Nashville to start recording. It's like, dude, really?
Family,
You're just that's just nuts. But we saw Fripp open up for Porcupine Tree, and let me just tell you about the Robert Fripp set for a minute, and I'll let Joe go into more detail about it.
Sure.
But let me just tell you that hearing that set was like watching whales hump for 45 minutes.
It was
weird.
It was.
He's doing like the soundscape stuff.
It was the soundscape sort of Frippertronics thing, and the
Frippertronics.
That's what he calls it. He calls it Frippertronics.
I didn't know.
That in the
it's like 70s. On Progcast.
Yeah.
But let me just set this up for you, because it's worth telling. This is really funny. So we get down to the gig, and we're all excited because not only are we going to get to see a great Porcupine Tree show, but Robert Fripp, one of our King Crimson heroes, Tomorrow's is going to be opening. So we've all heard the stories about how he's notoriously camera shy and I guess shy of crowds in general. Mm-hmm. And so they had everybody let into the lobby of the theater. But the main doors to the seating area were still closed. So everybody's hovering in the bar. Hundreds of people hovering around the bar, waiting for them to open up the seating area. And finally, around 8 o'clock, they open the doors, and he's on stage sound checking, or so we thought. And so everybody kind of quietly and very timidly walks in, not knowing exactly what's going on. We thought maybe they opened the doors too early, or we didn't know what was going on. House lights are still up. And so we sat down, and everybody was very quiet and watched him do his sound check. And he did this for about a half hour of whale noises. And then he took a quick bow, and he left, and that was his set. He had actually started the performance before they opened the doors because we found out later it felt right.
I was going to say, I'll bet you that was very deliberate. I think everything he does is deliberate and all about the art, and nothing else matters.
It was nuts. Yeah. It was nuts.
Have you ever heard 45 minutes of whales humping?
I love that guy.
Well, I'll tell you, that was the Dead Wing tour for Porcupine Tree, and that set just smoked.
Yeah, I bet. They're amazing live.
Really good. All right, man, before we let you go, you have another book in mind? Do you have something that you're working on? What do you got going on?
I'm not actually working on anything. Mm-hmm. I've definitely got some things swirling around in my head. I kind of have gotten a couple new ideas in the last several weeks. But right now I'm just kind of more concentrated on seeing this one through, because I feel like there's a lot more life in it, and Ian tells me that there will be a lot more life in it, and I kind of want to stick with it for a while. I don't see myself as being a Martin Popoff. I mean, I think he's great, but there's no way I could write 2, 3, 4 books a year. I don't see. I would love to if I could make a good living at it, but it's just not feasible. And I've definitely got another several books in me, no doubt, and I can't wait to do another one because I love this process.
Yeah. Well, this book is so intense. I mean, there's so much going on in this book. It's not. I mean, it's certainly not like knock this thing out in 6 months kind of deal. And
no, God, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really, if you haven't picked up the book yet, it's Mean Deviation: 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal, and it's really just it's a really, really great read. So I would recommend everyone picking it up.
Yeah, our listeners especially will absolutely eat this up. And where can they go, Jeff? Where should they go to pick up the book?
They can go to a variety of places. I mean, they can go to bazillionpoints.com. That's the best place. They'll get some goodies that they wouldn't get otherwise, and I think they've still got signed copies. They can go to Amazon, always, the place. A lot of the metal mail orders have it. Century Media and The End Records has it. Various others. I think even Hell's Headbangers started carrying it, which is great because they're like a super underground, crazy death metal sort of thing, and I was surprised they even took it in, but I'm glid they did. So it's all over. I've gotten pictures of people that have seen it in Barnes & Noble, and
that's where I bought it this weekend. Was in Barnes & Noble.
Which city?
In Woodland Hills.
Woodland Hills, awesome. Yeah, and I know Borders has had copies, so it's all over. And in fact, I don't know if I can say this. I will say it. We're pretty close to having a translated version in Italian coming out. So.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's good. I don't know anyone who
would
speaks
jump at
Italian.
it first, but maybe they're next.
All those PFM and Banco fans are going to be really excited.
Yeah, what an honor,
Right. Maybe someone could translate it in opera. Like an Italian opera, just read it like operatica. Yeah.
That would be Jeff Tate.
And put a CD in there.
Drinking wine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's pretty good stuff.
Very nice. Well, this has been a real treat for us, Jeff. Before we let you go, though...
For me, too. Thanks a lot for your interest.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to remind all our listeners to please go check out this book because it's great fun. But before we let you go, we always like to hit our guests with 3 rapid-fire questions on the way out of the used bin. Just the first thing that comes to mind. What was the first record you ever bought?
Kiss Alive 2.
Nice. All American man. I like it.
Yeah, Larger Than Life. Oh, yeah.
Nice. Very nice. If you weren't writing and listening to lots of prog metal, what else do you think you'd be doing right now?
Cooking.
Nice. Guys, you
wow.
got a specialty?
Pizza.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And
Brad's in.
crazy, in kind of crazy Asian hybrid of my own making, yeah.
Very
Excellent.
nice. Very
That's
nice.
great.
And last, most important to us, and very obvious to you, but we do ask this of everybody. If you were trapped on a desert island and you could only bring one Rush album with you, what would it be?
Moving Pictures. You don't even have to finish the question.
Wow.
Is that right?
Okay.
I want you to explain that one before you go. Sorry. I mean,
well,
we
that's
get
the
that a
first one
lot.
I heard, but that's not necessarily why it's my favorite. I just think it's a perfect album. It's like airtight, solid. It's my favorite production of all time. I think it just sounds fantastic. I love to sink into it in a dark room. It's the ultimate. It's them at their peak. What can I say?
So you're going to the, or you've already gone, I assume, to the Time Machine tour? You've seen them do it?
I'm kind of a weird geek with the whole album in its entirety in concert thing. I feel like the concert experience should be totally separate than the album experience.
That's fair.
That's probably because I'm such an album geek. I'm a total album geek. I'd rather listen to an album than a song.
It's fair. No, it's true.
So I have actually a little bit of trouble with it, yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, I just got a quick email from Brian, a.k.a. MSU Bulldog, who just wanted to say, hey.
Right on.
Yeah, he's listening to the show. So
Portland
cool.
beer power.
There you go. That's what he says.
Man.
Yeah, it says he's drinking some beer, hanging out in Portland, Oregon.
Awesome. He's great, yeah.
Thanks, Brian, for listening to the show. It's very cool, and sending an email. That was great.
Absolutely.
All right, Jeff, we wish you much success with this book, and I think you deserve it. It's a really epic read, especially, for guys like us who are just eat up this genre of music and everything that it encompasses. I think you did a really fine job doing it.
That's what it's written for, so thanks a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And stay in touch. You have an open invitation to join us here in the Newsbin anytime you like.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
You betcha.
Right, take care.
Had a great time. Yep.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye now. And there you go. Jeff Wagner.
That was good fun.
Ruling the world.
We got our prog on tonight.
I'm a fan.
Yeah?
Yeah, I am. I'm a fan. It's always good when you can talk to someone. It reminds me, and I would imagine I'll use this as a point of reference for years to come on this show, but he's the Harvey Kubernik of prog metal. Do you know what I mean?
I like it.
Like how in-depth Harvey is about that genre, that 60s genre of music. I think Jeff is with prog metal.
Yeah, that's fair.
God, we need more of it.
We do.
Bring it on.
We do. We need more of that, and we need Grammys and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all that to recognize prog metal.
Could you imagine? One night we should put together the prog metal Grammys.
Absolutely, I want to see like Miley Cyrus and Michael Bublé walk on stage and go, "We're here to present the nominees for best prog metal album of the year." And the nominees are, and they're going to rattle off, Pain of Salvation,
sure,
and Opeth, and Symphony X,
right, Dream Theater. Yeah, I'm in for that. I think we should do
Vandergraaf Generator.
All right, I'll put this challenge out there then for our listeners, and I know there's a bunch of devoted emailers out there. Put together your Grammys. Few categories, put 3 or 4 categories together, right?
Okay.
We'll do best progressive metal song, best progressive metal album. So what is that? Song of the year, album of the year. What can we do? What are the other Grammy type
Best
categories?
New Artist.
Best new artist.
Best new artist in prog metal.
I'll even open it up to progressive rock. It doesn't have to just be prog metal.
Sure.
How's that? We'll make it progressive music. So the best new artist in the progressive music genre. Best song of the year and album of the year.
I'm a Grammy member. I actually posed this very question last year to my Grammy rep, and I said, what would it take to create a new genre that's recognized by the Grammys? And I made my point, and I said, we're talking about bands that over the course of the last several decades have sold millions and millions of records. If you're including bands like Genesis and Yes and Rush,
right.
bands Jethro Tull or whatever, millions of records, and so they've got it under consideration. But I haven't heard anything back in a while.
Don't hold your breath.
But then again, Muse is playing the Grammys this year, so I don't know if maybe that's a step in the right direction.
Muse prog.
No, they don't.
Yeah, Muse is mainstream.
Yeah, I guess
it's
so.
played on K-Rock and Kiss FM.
I guess so.
So wait, that's 3 categories. Is there any other categories? We'll stick with those 3. Okay, so those 3. Joe and I will come up with some, and then Rachel is going to read them, and she's going to decide the winners.
What about best concept album?
Oh yeah, best concept album.
But see, the problem is it's got to be in the year. It's got to be within a year. So how many concept albums come out in a year?
Were there any good concept albums this year?
I'd have to think about it.
Or in 2010 even?
I don't know.
I can't think of any. I mean, the last one I remember were like Incident, and that was 2009,
Right.
and the Transatlantic was 2009 maybe.
But that's why we have to come up with those. Oh, I mean, I love that category, believe me, if it was an overall category.
But are you going with the Grammys stipulations? Because they have Wrath nominated for a Grammy this year, and that's back, I think, in 2008.
But it had to have been on an album that was released in 2010 somehow.
Well, you can all just get creative and send us your list, and
Yes,
we'll hit them up.
3 categories. Joe and I will come up with a list, and then Rachel gets to pick the winners in all the categories.
And speaking
This is
of
big fun, I'm excited.
And speaking of Rachel,
It's the Used Bin Grams.
when we come back from this next break, we're going to speak to Rachel about the music news.
Why do you want to go to a break so quick?
Because I got a song that I want to hear.
Or do you want to pee?
No.
Tell the truth.
No.
Do you have to pee right now?
All right, maybe.
All right, play the song.
All right, this is a little Queensryche for you. Going old school. How about The Whisper?
Okay.
It's a whisper. It's a whisper.
hand, please.
And welcome back into the Used Bin.
Welcome back.
So I was thinking,
yeah,
and I do that periodically, so don't make a joke about it.
That's because you've got an IQ.
My IQ is increasing. I was thinking, if I had a business,
right,
And if I had a band,
right,
I would ask you, Joe Mama, for some naked photos of your mom.
Right.
And I would say, how could I post them on the internet? You know what you would say?
It's a quandary.
It is a quandary. You know what you would say?
I would say,
for only pennies a day, Brad, you can have your very own website.
Yes, you can.
It's true. It's true. Because thanks to our partnership with GoDaddy.com, we can hook you up and get you started. It's very simple.
How simple is it?
Just check out the complete list of coupon codes at purerockradio.net/
Not Axel.
GoDaddy, and enter coupon code
POD
167 at the time of purchase, and you'll save
10% at
on
least.
All web hosting packages.
All of them. Every single one of those packages.
Big packages.
Big, huge, thick
packages.
Greasy package. I don't know where that came from.
There's some big packages. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I'm serious about that. It's really easy. It's so easy. GoDaddy.com offers lots of free tools to build your site,
prison sex,
and get you started. And by using coupon code
POD
167, you'll be supporting
your pals and my pals
at Used Bin Radio, and our pals at
purerockradio.net.
So, Peter Gabriel, check out the complete list of coupon codes at purerockradio.net/
Not Axel.
GoDaddy. And you, that's right, you, Rachel, and you, Joe Mama, and you, Jeff Wagner, if you're still listening.
Say hi to your mom for us. Nicely done. Nicely done.
That was fun, right?
Absolutely.
All right, hit it, Mama.
You know what else is fun?
Tell me.
Hey, that's right. It's time for Rachel, the Metal Warrior Princess, with all of your music news needs. Extra, extra. And there she is, Rachel.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
I love that GoDaddy music. It's very...
Isn't that cool?
It's like Murph and the Magic Tones. I dig it. So, I was just looking at some rumors, and we were talking about last week how Velvet Revolver are testing out a known singer, but we don't know who that is. And the rumor is it's Corey Taylor of Slipknot and Stone Sour.
Interesting. Now, isn't after the Stone Sour thing, isn't there supposed to be a Slipknot regrouping?
They're scheduled for some festivals during the summer,
right.
And they've been talking about going back into the studio, but nothing's definite right now.
Yeah, I think I read that. They're definitely doing these two shows, but he keeps going back and forth on if he wants to do Slipknot again after the death of Paul Gray. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big Slipknot fan. Bigger Stone Sour fan probably than a Slipknot fan. And do it again. Okay, sorry.
We need some video here.
We're making movies.
Yeah, right.
We're making movies. But I don't need him as the singer of Velvet Revolver.
No, I don't either.
You don't think so?
No.
Because I think
he'd be good.
He has a really great voice, and he has a range, and he can bring in a new fan base, I think.
That's probably true, but I don't know. I think of him as more of a modern guy than them. I wouldn't call them an 80s band, but they're sort of almost like nostalgic classic rock.
That's true, and it wouldn't quite be Velvet Revolver,
right,
as we would know them. Yeah, maybe they'd have to change their name.
Yeah, right.
Come to think of it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Plus, I mean, on the Slipknot front, I don't know. I just seem to... I enjoyed Stone Sour more than I ever liked Slipknot. I'd rather see him concentrate on that because it's really his gig, and you get to see his face. It's got to be weird to try to put makeup back on, right? Remember when Kiss took off the makeup in the 80s? It was weird when in 96 or whatever it was, they said, all right, we're going to put the makeup back on. Well, this is confusing. We know what you look like now. Yeah. It's not a novelty anymore.
Well, it was fun in 96. That was the first time I saw Kiss play.
And a lot of people saw him for the first time then.
It finally clicked.
Because that was like, they became Kiss again when they put the makeup on. That's the difference between Kiss and maybe, well, for me anyway. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big Slipknot fan. But I think, Joe, you absolutely nailed it. With Velvet Revolver and Corey Taylor, it's very weird to hear a guy, frontman of a modern metal band, sort of front not a dated metal band, but a dated metal band, and I don't think they have any problem bringing in fans. I mean, if you put Slash and Duff in the same band together, and whatever the drummer's name is, just kidding.
It's like mixing eras. It's like mixing genres. It would be like putting something wacky, like I don't know, like an old school progressive rock drummer in a modern metal band, like Avenged Sevenfold. Never mind.
Who's their drummer? Who was their drummer?
Mike. Some guy, he used to play in a band called Dream
Theater.
Yeah, that's the guy.
So he's not in that band anymore?
Not anymore.
Wait a minute, what?
Allegedly.
He's allegedly out of Dream. Would that be something?
Out.
Would that be something? That would be the most, I don't want to say Machiavellian, but Machiavellian thing ever. He's out of the band. They won't let him back in the band. They've got a new drummer. And who's the new drummer?
Mike Portnoy.
That would be something.
I don't think it's far-fetched. I really don't.
I don't know.
I think the reason why we don't know who the drummer is because they don't know who the drummer is yet.
Well,
that would be great. That would be great. They would have to unveil it like as a cover story in like Classic Prog magazine or something like that.
You're like a grassy knoll chick, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's a second shooter.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a conspiracy guy at all, so I don't think I'm buying that. But I'd be pissed if you want to know the truth. I'd be bitter about it. Yeah,
I don't know.
Be funny.
Sometimes the obvious as a surprise could be really cool. This really has nothing to do with music, but I'm remembering a time where just shortly after the entire family, we had moved out to Los Angeles. We're originally from New York, and there was a period of time where it sounded like Dad was going to get transferred back to New York, and Mom was actually looking at houses on the East Coast again, and they told us we were moving back. And one day at breakfast, they said, "We have a picture of where we're going to be living," and they showed us, me and my brothers, a picture of the house we lived in Los Angeles.
That's great.
And it was like, this is great. And then Mike Portnoy was very happy.
You mean Mike Portnoy was your dad?
That's all I'm saying. He was my dentist, actually. That's a long story.
Oh, Lordy. All right, Rach, what else do you got?
Okay, well, Judas Priest have clarified that they are not splitting up, nor are they retiring, as they had brought to our attention a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Guitarist Glenn Tipton has stated on his website that this by no means is the end of the band. We are presently writing new material, but we do intend this to be our last major tour. So they're just done touring.
Are you excited about that?
Well, I mean, Nostradamus, Grinder, Ram It Down.
I love me some Ram It Down.
God.
Yeah.
I do. Why are you
God.
playing this? I'm trying to figure out where...
Because it's so exciting.
No, wait, we're talking about Judas Priest. You need a man doing that.
That's right. I'd have to say that what's the point of a Judas Priest record if there's no tour? I just want to go hear the old shit. They haven't put out a good record in so long. Like, who cares?
I think the thing is that now they can use Pro Tools and get away with it because you know.
I don't know. That's not. I'm not buying it. I'm underwhelmed. No.
And
no.
what DVD is this from?
When Harry Met Sally.
Yes.
No, they were asking her who her favorite prog band was, and so she was going, yes.
It's funny. I just thought that was a tape of Charlie Sheen's 36-hour bender.
Nice. I like it.
It's pretty hot. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I don't think that's a good thing at all. Hi, Rach.
Well,
moving along.
Zach Wilde and William Shatner have paired up to record a cover of Black Sabbath's
There's a pair
Iron Man.
you never hear together in the same sentence too often.
But you never see them in the same room together either.
Well, Shatner has a forthcoming album, Seeking Major Tom. So he has a concept album, people.
Nice.
Seeking Major Tom.
Yes.
It's a Bowie sequel, if you will. I don't know what to say about that.
Dude, really?
Don't Don't you love his spoken word? I mean, come on.
I do actually. I do actually. I've mentioned this on the show before, but there was one period of time when it was I don't know, maybe mid '90s, when he was sort of making a very cheesy and kitschy comeback with his spoken word, and he popped up on, it was either the MTV Awards or the Grammys American Music Awards, and he had a couple of the guys from Jellyfish on stage with him, sort of playing beatnik bongos.
I love that. Only Shatner can get away with that,
absolutely, and it was so good. And he was reciting the lyrics to the songs that were nominated that year, which was like, I don't know, like Backstreet Boys or Eminem or I don't know, whoever it was, Bobby Brown, and he would recite the lyrics.
Now, instead of applause, did he get like snap?
Right. It was a whole beatnik vibe.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. You know.
I know.
Turn this up for a sec, homie. This is like inverted penis music. Isn't it?
Dennis DeYoung, ladies and gentlemen.
This is one of those I want to make sure you're paying attention songs. Yeah. I have no time for William Shatner and Zakk Wylde recording together. Go back to Black Label Society. Go back to Star Trek.
Go back to Ozzy.
I don't care.
I don't care.
No, you know, do I really need Zakk? If Zakk Wylde made a huge press release and said, I am returning to the band Ozzy Osbourne, you would care for about 8 seconds.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
Nothing.
That's probably true.
In fact, I'll go one step further. The fact that Ozzy is in talks with Sabbath to do a Sabbath record is disgusting.
Yeah, that's definitely a negative for me at this point.
Awful.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want to see.
Yeah.
Diminishing returns, ladies and gentlemen.
Especially with the death of Ronnie James Dio and the fact that they were out there doing Sabbath but couldn't use the Sabbath name until they were done with Dio, and then he sucks the band back in with all the money.
It's all just dirty.
It is.
It's dirty.
Yeah.
It's soiled.
What happened? Because they are the preeminent metal band. And now they're like, it's bad.
Mr. Bill Ward! Mr. Bill Ward!
Yeah, who plays drums on that song?
Go crazy! Sharon!
The whole thing is bad with them now. I mean, really is. Like, they're a punchline.
Hello, everybody!
Nicely done!
Is that Sharon Osbourne or the Wicked Witch of the West?
What's the difference?
Depends who you ask.
Ask Bruce Dickinson. You'll get an honest answer there.
Fair enough. Oh, you know what? Speaking of Bruce, I forgot to ask Jeff about. I wanted to ask him about the Skunkworks record.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Seventh Son.
No. I wanted to ask him about Skunkworks, and I wanted to talk about that period of Maiden without Bruce and what Bruce was into and all that kind of stuff. But next time,
the Blaze Bayley years, ladies and gentlemen. I remember very few songs from that period. I wrote that period off. I remember the was that the Klansman? Yeah. That was the Klansman.
That's the and they still play that live.
Sign of the Cross. Oh stop!
Well, here's one that I'm personally excited about.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, what are you guys doing on March 3rd? Well, the answer is you're going to Fresno because Lamb of God drummer Chris Adler will embark on a Mapex drum tour beginning February 28th. Chris will play on Mapex newly released Black Panther Blaster drum set, which was introduced at the NAMM show.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. But there was an awful lot to see, though. In defense, there was an awful lot to see.
Well, it's a drum clinic, and so he'll be sitting with all the people in attendance and answering questions. Chris Adler, the drummer for Lamb of God.
Okay, very good. Very good.
So you're not rushing out to get in line for this anytime soon?
Hey, you know what?
It's going to take a lot to get me to Fresno, and that just ain't it.
You might not be a Lamb of God fan, but he is an amazing drummer. You have to give him that.
I have no problem with that. If he was, at the Key Club or at the Westfield Topanga Plaza Mall, I'd probably go.
And yeah, he also has a book coming out. It's basically short stories and reflections. He talks about the
short stories and reflections of my time with Lamb of God.
Well, yes.
Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes,
that book is going to race to the bestseller list.
But what he's reflecting about is he talks about the making of the album New American Gospel. So
you're a Lamb of God fan.
I'm a Lamb of God fan. Right. I love me some Lamb of God.
Talk about it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. They fucking rule.
All right.
And I don't swear, but I'd have to say that, you want some meaty vocals, that guy can sing. You want some drums, that guy can play drums. You want some guitar, you got it. You want some bass, you got the bass. Every single album, you cannot go wrong. You say, I sit here and champion Tool, go get yourself some Lamb of God, people. You might have a problem with the growling vocals, but you'll get past that. You listen to the music, done.
Go-to record?
Well, the most popular and go-to would be Sacrament. Ashes of the Wake is also good. You can't go wrong. But if you're just trying it out and you want the big production, get Sacrament.
This is quite the sales pitch.
It's a flawless studio album.
Wow.
Does Mike
Rachel
play drums
taking a stand?
Wow.
She is not messing around here tonight. She is selling some copies of Lamb of God out of the trunk of her car tonight.
So why is he writing a book about the recording of this particular album? What was so intense about it? Do you know?
Well, you know what? Alongside with the album, he's also has drum tablature that he
did with Mike Portnoy.
He transcribed. Thank you. I'm trying to think. He transcribed himself, which a lot of the times when you're getting the tablature, it wasn't transcribed by the artist, so you're going to get it exactly how it's meant to be. So,
okay,
get yourself the book.
But why? I'm curious why this book is the focal point. Why the recording of this particular album is the focal point of the book. Like, was there a major?
We'll have to get the book.
No, damn.
He'll let you know why.
All right.
I'll tell you what. When I get the book, I'll let you know why.
Okay.
I'll do a follow-up.
Fair enough. All right, one more, please.
Okay, well. Bum-ba-da-dum-bum-bum. Rush have been nominated in the Music DVD of the Year category for a documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage at the 2011 Juno Awards, which is Canada's Grammy Awards.
Nice.
And that's going to be held on March 27th, so I'm going to have to go ahead and congratulate them early because we know that they won.
Absolutely. And deservedly so, too. It's not like, one of those years where an old band is being championed by, all of the media. They really deserved it. That is a monstrous piece of work, and I've said it before, even my wife, who is by no stretch of the imagination a fan, watched it and was gripped from beginning to end and said, wow, that was really interesting and I learned a lot and enjoyed it.
My son even enjoys watching the documentary. In fact, bless his heart, the other day my husband was playing the guitar and he started playing a Heart song and he goes, Dad, what's that? And I said, that's a Heart song. And he's telling him about the sisters and how, I go, they kind of show the guys how it's done. And he turned and looked at me and he said, no, Mom, the guitar player from Rush, he shows the boys how it's done. Wow. I could have fainted.
Wow, nice.
Good for him. It's a smart young man.
He goes, what's his name? I said, Alex Lifeson. Alex Lifeson shows him how it's done.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. You've brought your son up right, and you should be proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, I'm patting myself on the back
Well
here.
done, as you should. All right, Rachel, great job as always with the news. Thank you. And thank you for being you, and thank you for the Lamb of God sales pitch.
Yeah, that was quite a sales pitch. I'm going to have to check them out now.
You have to.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to leave that to you.
Okay, well, the phone lines are open. We're going to go to a break right now, but if there's anything on your mind, if you want to let us know what you've been listening to, if you've just been progging out or want to tell us about your mom, give us a call, 888-405-7440. It's the Used Bin, and we're rocking.
Whoa, we're rocking. What are we rocking to?
Rocking and rolling.
I'm thinking a little Pain of Salvation right now.
Good.
as much as you are mine. So let me into your love. Just breathe deep and take another sip. So still, it's just but to make it a kill spell. On your lip, you are too close. I let you come between my legs. You are close to depth and sun. And I'm not your daughter as much as you're my son. I'll let you come with my mouth on your end. So ready a third for the next trip. You let me in, I'll let you come. I never let you down. You let me win. I'll let you drown. When you go down, when you are cracked, and wow. I am crying. I'm with deep in this battle. I'm not trying to break this big crust of silence.
Hey everybody, what the hell's going on? This is Zach Wild from Black Label Society. We're all doing a hang. Joe and Brad, man. On Used Bin Radio. Got it.
There we go. Hey, welcome back into the Used.
Welcome back.
That was some Pain of Salvation. God bless them.
That was called Used. I love that.
God bless them. Quick update here. We've got an update from Fergie, who is at the Ozzy and Slash show tonight, and he says that Slash just went off and he rocked. He closed with Paradise City. Also did Sweet Child of Mine and Night Train. He said his singer is way better than Axl ever was, but doesn't do the heavy metal shuffle dance. So it's so sad. Now on to the Prince of Darkness. So thank you for the quick update there, Fergie.
Go crazy, Fergie!
That's right. And let's hit the phones and see who we got. Who's in the used bin and where are you calling from?
It's you know who it is. It's Kyle.
Yes. How are you, buddy?
Welcome. The end of the abridged time we have left in the show, I guess. But
that's okay, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. And a special word of thanks. I know that you kind of spread the word today and got the word out about Jeff's appearance on. We saw it on lots of blogs and all the usual sites. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a message board addict, on some of them. I'm sure there's a lot of them that I don't even go to, but you can just try shamelessly plugging, and maybe some people will hear about it. I know a few months back with the Labrie discussion and stuff, when he was on the air with you guys, a lot of the message boards heard about. That's how I actually heard about you guys personally. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks again for doing that. That was very, very cool of you. I hope you enjoyed the interview.
Oh, yeah, it was a good interview. Although I was just thinking, while calling you guys up, there were probably a handful of points I might have added or but added to some of the references, even just like the Nick DiVirgilio, Mark Zonder thing.
Well, let's hear a few of the references.
It was in 2003. From what I remember, Zonder played maybe for the West Coast leg.
Well, we saw it West Coast.
And DiVirgilio, okay, maybe it was the East Coast leg. I thought it was like Seattle or something he played in, but he only played a couple shows, and then DiVirgilio was, on the rest.
Interesting. Any idea why? Was it medical reasons or was it personal reasons? Or
yeah, I forget. I know that pretty much he was. Even before that, he was of the belief I can still record with Fates Warning, but I'm not going to tour.
Interesting.
I saw them in 2001. Luckily, I feel really fortunate. Just like I got to see Neil Morris with Spock's beard.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark Zonder live with Fates Warning may never happen again, unfortunately. Although Fates Warning live doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So for the future, would you be more interested in a new Fates Warning record with the more modern lineup, or the Arch project?
That is a question I would not want to pick.
Okay.
I adore the John Arch EP, and I love the John Arch stuff from the 80s, too. But I also am a just dedicated Ray Alder fan, so... And I actually, he suggested Perfect Symmetry as the follow-up record for you, Joe, after you heard A Pleasant Shade of Grey.
Right.
My recommendation, it's not universal, but my recommendation would be naturally to go to the next record, Disconnected.
Okay.
It's a good record.
It has Kevin Moore, of course. He didn't write any of the music, but he played on A Pleasant Shade of Grey, and he actually played on Disconnected as well.
I have that one, and I'm ashamed to say I have never listened to it. That falls in that category we were talking about earlier, of a handful of records that are sitting up on my wall.
Dust. You got some gold gathering dust, buddy. You may.
I guess so.
There's a 17-minute epic on it that I will make one comparison that you may go grab it right after the show.
Okay.
Marillion, the second half of that epic still remains. It reminds me of a lot of Marillion.
Well, I'm not going to be here for the next 10 minutes of the show. I have to go right now. Goodbye, everyone.
Why I suggested Perfect Symmetry was only because we were talking about the John Arch years.
Right. It's a great record.
Yeah.
Perfect Symmetry is a terrific record, and some people consider it's a bridge. He made a good point about it being sort of a bridge record. But I just think if you really love The Pleasant Shade of Grey and the more modern, changes in their sound, Disconnected is, the natural one to kind of look at after that.
Very good. Very good.
I wish I wrote a bunch of questions on it, as you guys may have seen on the blog and everything.
We hit a few of them.
Book. I want to thank you guys for asking. He actually sent me a message. He's really cool, that guy, Jeff.
Very
He sent me a message saying if we can't get to all your questions, I'd be happy to answer them, just directly or something.
There you go.
Maybe I'll post them on my blog. But I mentioned two bands that I happen to really love recently in the last couple years.
Okay.
Maudlin of the Well and Sixth.
What was the second one?
Sixth.
They're a British band. They're not around. Both these bands are defunct, sadly.
Okay.
But Sixth, SIKTH. But I'm surprised. You might have heard of Maudlin of the Well because they played at Prog West, I believe it was, the festival out in California in 2002 or 2001. Maybe in the same year, actually, that the Shaman of the True was done by Nick DiVirgilio.
Yeah, it does sound familiar, and I might have seen them. I think, trying to remember who else played back then.
Maudlin of the Well are sort of like Opeth in some sense. They do like the kind of folky or a lot of color, and then they go into the extreme metal. They blend, but the textures they use on their guitar, Toby Driver, I guess, used to fall asleep, and he'd tune his guitar right before he'd fall asleep or something. And they put out 2 records in 2001 there. It's just absolutely gold to me. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to hear something a little different that's progressive metal, and the extreme vocals aren't, they're only like maybe 1/3 of the vocals on it.
Okay, that's good. That works for me.
Now he's doing something called KO Dot, which really isn't metal, sadly, but it's what he wants to do. It's his muse. So.
Right. Okay. All right. Very nice. Fair enough.
And Sixth, you guys watch Monty Python ever? Or?
Sure.
They're from England, Sixth. They were, the members, and they broke up a couple of years ago, but they kind of have a really kind of sick, twisted, but very avant-garde sense of humor.
I like that.
They have some really crazy musicianship at the same time. I don't know if you heard of Unexpect. They were on Prog Nation in Europe.
Oh, no. Yeah, they did get it. They got a different lineup over there than we got, so no, we didn't see them.
Sort of, like theatrical kind of stuff. I mean, again, the vocals may be a little too crazy for you guys, but if you can get past that part, the musicianship is just outstanding on some of these bands, and I think these bands specifically, if you can get past that much, can mean that much more to you.
So is this like a sort of like a Mr. Bungle kind of thing?
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison because Bungle, they dove into some sides of metal, and kind of like that. I mean, Sixth, I don't think are maybe as crazy, maybe not quite as crazy as Mr. Bungle, where they're putting reggae and ska or whatever, and with jazz and then all these other crazy genres.
Right.
But Sixth they're sick. That's the best way to put it.
Well, that's interesting. I'm in.
So I'm curious if he talked about those. You ever get nice? Like you guys were playing Jellyfish earlier, and I kind of look at Jellyfish in a way, being way ahead of their time.
Way ahead, man. Do I miss that band? I was a huge fan.
Why do you think they're way ahead of their time, Kyle?
It's a shame, but it's maybe if they were still around, we wouldn't feel that way about them. I don't know.
Why do you think that? Why do you think they were so way ahead of their time?
I think, part of it is they just had an ability to write really clever pieces and mold them with their influences, and then something about the production on those Jellyfish records is just it doesn't sound like if they came out today, it would sound perfect today.
But do you think in terms of songwriting and the songs and all that, you believe that they were ahead of their time? I mean, who today?
XTC, you could say they owe something to XTC, I guess, Jellyfish, but I kind of see like bands like the New Pornographers and some of those other power pop bands, the Apples in Stereo, a lot of the Elephant Six bands, sort of
the Bare Naked Ladies, right?
Coattails, and none of them are as good as Jellyfish.
Right, all right, that's fair. Good answer.
Maudlin of the Well, Sixth. There's a couple bands that are directly influenced by both of them since Time of Orchids.
Right.
Another one I love is this band from Australia called Clan Zoo, and they're not around either. They put out a couple great records in a 2-year period, and you guys were talking about Watchtower. I mean, that band never got the due, but they influence a lot of bands.
Right. Well, I think that's the idea behind this book is it's a lot about the forebears and not the followers. He's really trying not to get into the Symphony X's of the world, because the Symphony X's of the world are known as Dream Theater clones or the Shadow Galleries. Yeah, the
Circus Maximus, yeah.
Right. He stays a bit away from that. I mean, they're mentioned in the book, but they're certainly not the focal point. You know, the focal point would be Dream Theater as opposed to everyone that followed Dream Theater. Does that make sense?
I think a lot of bands that just have a short window of time, maybe they don't get the credit, but you just treat them as being really great for when they were around, you know?
Right. Well, listen, I like some of those bands. I like some of the Dream Theater clone-y bands. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I
Shadow
like,
Gallery.
Yeah,
you know?
I like some Shadow Gallery, sure.
You know.
I like some...
Magellan, anyone? Magellan?
I like some
Magellan
Symphony X.
I have one record I really like, actually. I haven't listened to their earlier, but was it Test of Wills? That was praised pretty heavily.
Right. So, you know, I mean, some of those bands are fine with me, but like we said in that interview, some of the bands that, like... You know, I mean, some of the bands that change for the sake of change, and actually Joe pointed this out before we got on the air tonight, was that sometimes change for the sake of change just sucks. And I'm a firm believer in that.
That's when Pain of Salvation puts out an album like B, and you scratch your head and you go, I don't get this band. And it's a shame that, you know, I didn't listen to them earlier, because I could have been enjoying them for years, but it's only recently. And now I'm looking forward to discovering Fate's Warning, who obviously I was listening to the wrong stuff, at least for my taste. I was listening to the wrong stuff all this time.
Sometimes you can't be around when it's around. It's almost more enjoyable when you kind of, even though you feel sad, but you get back and you, like myself recently with Cloud Cult. I didn't know about their earlier albums, and I feel bad I wasn't around at that point, but it's never too late, you know?
Look, I did that with Saga. I decided I didn't like Saga. Mm-hmm. I liked the record without Michael Sadler. I went and listened to the older stuff. Can't help you.
Yeah, and that's part of our mission here, just to kind of bring it full circle. We want to make sure that we can at least talk about some of these bands, especially when they're young or if they're sort of on the cusp of breaking, so that we can turn people on to new stuff before they have a chance to miss them, before they're gone. Yeah. Right. Oh. And we want to thank you for always chiming in with some of that. We're
love the fact that you posted Blackfield, by the way, on your blog.
Yeah,
of course.
Awesome. Love those tunes are great.
Yeah, have you heard the new one? The new tune, I think, is even better than Glass House.
Yeah,
Waving, the one that someone posted. So
absolutely.
Yeah, although you were talking to him about Steven Wilson, he's got that going on. He's got the solo album, and he's got this Mike Aracofeld thing.
Yeah,
he's busy.
Lot to look forward to.
I don't know how much time he's going to have off this year.
Kyle, we got to let you go because we're hitting the end of the show. But thank you again for all the work that you did on our behalf. We appreciate it, pal.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, man.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye,
care.
Kyle. All right, and Kyle's blog, by the way, if you want to check it out, allmediareviews.blogspot.com. I think that's right. So there you go. All right, so should we do some thank yous, Joe Mama?
Yes.
I don't want you to sit down.
Okay, Mama feet.
All right, so let's do some thank yous.
Let's.
I want to thank. Excuse me, Jesus.
You're excused.
Rich at purerockradio.net.
Yes,
thank you so
Rich.
much, Rich.
And Rich is just about caught up on all of the podcasts right now. So if you've been checking out the site and hitting refresh and hitting refresh and hitting refresh and not getting any new shows, it's all coming. We just got Matt Scannell up, and there's a couple more that will get us all caught up. While we're on the subject real quick, I just wanted to say that I wanted to say hi to a new listener, TJ, who now listens to us from Sydney, Australia.
Oh, nice.
He doesn't always get a chance to catch us live because of the time difference, but he's loving the podcast, and he has been hitting refresh, and it's all coming, pal.
Yeah.
Thanks, TJ.
Well, that's really great. Thanks, TJ, and welcome into the Used Bin. All right, Terry Edwards and Max Krasny at Westwood One.
Thank you,
Rob
boys.
Wilson and Chris Stone for usedbin.com.
Yes.
And
thanks to Chris especially for putting up the new cartoon video on our homepage today.
Well, remember, you can go to usebin.com. There's a great cartoon that Hermie made, and we posted on the website. You'll really enjoy that. It's lots of fun. And go check out the forum. Lots of conversation going on in there. And you can continue this conversation throughout the week on the boards.
Indeed, which is what a lot of people have been doing on the forum. There's some great topics. We're talking about the Rush album that you would bring to the desert island, as well as which Rush album would you leave off the desert island. Things like just wacky conversations.
Good.
There's a lot of stuff going on over there and a lot of fun. So
oddly enough,
so check
we're
out the
talking
forum.
about Rush, which is weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Also, want to remind you guys, you can find us all the time on Facebook at Used Bin Radio, and also I'm tweeting a little bit. I'm trying to remember to tweet. Tweeting is very difficult for me, but I'm doing our best, and that's twitter.com/usedbinradio. So you can find us on there, and of course, like we mentioned earlier, the website usedbin.com. You have to go check it out. Go have some fun, for God's sakes. Do yourself a favor.
And join us here next Tuesday. We're going to have another special guest lined up next week. It's another FOP, but this one's a friend of Portnoy. We've got Qasim Sultan from Utopia. He played on the Meatloaf album, played on a million things that you'll recognize. We've had him here in the bin before, and he's really a treat and a wealth of music knowledge. But he's going to be playing with Portnoy in the upcoming Yellow Matter Custard tour, where they're going to be playing Beatles songs. Probably a little heavier than the Beatles would have done them.
Yes,
but it's all good.
Well, knowing Portnoy, they'll be sort of faithful to the original. But yeah, definitely check that out. And as always, thank you for joining us. We'll see you here next week, same time at usedbin.com. Joe Mama, nice to see you, pal.
And as always, to see ya is nice. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody!
Used Bin Radio. What are you listening to?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
You're listening to the live internet broadcast on Pure Rock Radio.